The biggest red flags that scream uneducated. Brutally honest edition. Being wrong? Being offered proof from a reliable source, then making up an excuse and continuing to willingly be wrong. I've seen a lot of conversations that went something like that. You're wrong. Oh yeah? What's your proof? Here's a document with actual proof. Well, I'm not reading that. A lack of curiosity. People in general would be a lot more educated if they just looked things up when they came across words or concepts they didn't understand. If I'm reading or watching something and think, what does that mean? I pull out my phone and give it a quick search. It doesn't make me an expert on anything, but it does widen my knowledge base just a tiny little bit and make me a more well-rounded person. Over time, all of those teensy bits add up. Confidently speaking on a subject you know 1% of. I've been in aviation for over 15 years, and I cringe and get annoyed when family or those outside of the industry just state strong opinions without knowing the whole picture or even a sliver. I'm in agriculture and it's obvious who's uneducated when they talk about farming like, it's just riding tractors and tossing hay. I can spot a non-farmer instantly by the way they talk about certain things but have no idea what they're actually saying. They have no clue how complex and demanding it actually is. A lack of cognitive flexibility or ability to understand different perspectives. If you've never used the phrase, I think I was wrong about blank, then you're probably uneducated. I've heard it phrased as, the more you know, the more you realize how little you know. Being stubborn enough to not change your opinion about something when being shown evidence to the contrary, or just being close-minded in general. Screaming incoherently when you're losing an argument. I love it when the repeat button gets hit. They just keep spamming whatever over and over. I don't care, bro. I don't care, bro. I don't care, bro. Pretending to be knowledgeable about everything. Reasonable people will just be able to say, you've lost me, or I don't know. Yep, I can think of plenty of times where some of the smartest people I know in my life have said I don't know. I think a lot of PhD examinations make a point of asking their candidates an impossible or barely related question to ascertain whether a candidate is capable of admitting something is outside their base of knowledge. Expressing a personal opinion as something objective, or their feeling as a fact, it's becoming worse. I've often seen them cite facts to suit their personal agenda and then say, facts don't care about your feelings. But when it's debunked, double down on what they believe to be real. I think there needs to be an addendum to that adage. My feelings don't care about your facts. That time an in-law said, they have seafood in Spain? Oh boy, so what kind of food did you eat in Spain? Bet you ate a lot of Mexican food, huh? That was my coworker upon my return from a vacation in Spain. I always suspected he was a few tacos short of a combination platter, but that basically confirmed it. I live in Ireland and had an American family member staying with me. One evening she was on the phone back to her friend in the USA and mentioned we were eating pizza. Her friend couldn't believe we had pizza in Ireland. Littering. I would posit there is a correlation between whether they litter and whether their IQ is above a certain threshold. Throwing stuff without quantifying the time, effort, and cost for someone or something else to pick it up and clean it from a beautiful environment is, crudely speaking, dumb. It stays there, becomes an eyesore, and rots its surroundings while people pass by and unconsciously ingrain that it's okay to litter. It's like a disease that spreads, and it's the environment, our nurturer and provider, that ultimately pays the price. Recreational fisherman here. I'm part of a group that voluntarily does cleanup at various launches and popular fishing locations in our Canadian forests. Nothing worse than fishing on a pristine lake and seeing the sunken beer cans from the, hey, y'all watch this, crowd. Strong second on this one. Bragging about not reading books. Someone once told me, I don't read. If it's a good book, they'll make it into a movie. Distinctly unattractive. My cousin's idiot boyfriend proudly said this to me last week. I don't read because my brain processes it all too fast and I get bored. I skim books every now and then, though. Quickly reverting to whataboutisms as soon as somebody challenges your argument. Putting an apostrophe in every plural. Playing videos or music in public without headphones. Uneducated or entitled? Oh, those two usually overlap. As a teacher, this is probably the most unexpected thing I teach to my students every motherfrickin' day, multiple times a day, and it drives me frickin' crazy. Headphones or volume off. In addition to teaching math, I repeat this phrase all damn day long. I'm so tired. Flat earthers. No further explanation needed. shouting and trying to achieve things by being aggressive and rude. I feel like a lot of these comments are based on values we attach to being smart, I guess. Being educated doesn't inherently gift you with humility. Being unable to admit that you're wrong could just mean that you're a butthole, not that you're uneducated. Educated people make mistakes. Admitting it just means you don't have a raging ego problem. Uttering my truth. I keep seeing this talked about. Can you explain to a lost French person what my truth means? Like, how is it used? It sounds like the kind of term that would be used by people who are really into horoscopes. Maybe I'm getting the wrong impression, though. It's just a way of saying, here are things I think are true, and I'm not interested in any contrary position. For example, it's my truth that the Earth is flat. I'm not saying you have to agree or that I insist you believe as I do, but I do insist you tolerate my position. I insist you not to object or, God forbid, argue that I'm incorrect. My truth is mine, and you don't have a right to do anything but agree or be silent, or else you're being rude. Tattoos with incorrect spelling, preferably on the face. No regrets. It depends on what you mean by educated. There are people with degrees who still lack critical thinking. Not being able to hold two opposing opinions in one head is, for me, a hallmark of a limited intellect. Using an apostrophe before an S to show plural. For example, I have 2 dog apostrophe S. There's a difference between plural and possessive. You can blow their minds with plural possessives too. Throwing cigarette butts out of a car window or smoking while pumping gas. No critical thinking skills or ability to research properly. Loud equals funny, or worse, loud equals correct. Littering. Disrespecting expertise. Disagreement is one thing, but it's entirely different to believe that every scientist is wrong about climate change. We can challenge experts, but outright dismissing them without even cursory knowledge is a sign that your critical thinking might need a jumpstart. Being racist. Driving around in a truck with a bunch of flags flapping. I was driving to work one time, and coming the other direction was a big full-size pickup truck with a flagpole in the back sticking over the cab of the truck. I was already rolling my eyes, and then I saw the flag. It was the Full Progress Pride flag. I almost had to pull over and recover from the shock. I feel like I would have gotten whiplash from that double take. Not changing one's opinion when presented with facts and new information. A lack of critical thinking and being easily frightened by news and political speak. But a better idea for stupidity would be a lack of self-awareness, because a self-aware person would at least question themselves and others, as well as understand their flaws and weaknesses. Willful ignorance. Talking louder in an argument. Getting homophones wrong. There, and there. The number 2 as in as well, and to, affect or effect. But the grand prize goes to mixing up aloud, as in allowing someone, and aloud, as in speaking aloud, really bothers me. In their defense, I can't get my brain to understand affect versus effect unless I stop to think for a moment. Do you believe in lead poisoning? A dumb coworker of mine asked me that, for real. Hold the phone. I want to know the line of events and thought processes that led to the person asking this question. Were they lead poisoned and had been told as such but didn't want to believe it? Had that happened to someone they know? Was this completely out of the blue and they just thought that metals were solids and you can't eat or drink those? I really want to know what was going on in their head. Sharing something or echoing something you heard one time without at least attempting to either do a bit of research or at the very least quickly Googling it to see if there's any possible truth to it. Do your own research is admittedly a bit of a slippery slope that's been weaponized by hardcore conspiracy theorists to disregard proven facts and instead just trust vague and unverified sources, but in itself, I think the ability to read up on something to see if it's accurate or not is more important now than ever. You should watch the episode of Surrounded by Jubilee, where it's Dr. Mike versus anti-vaxxers. He asks one of the women if anything he says will change her mind, and she looks him dead in the eyes, smirks, and then replies, "No, because I actually read and do my own research." She told a frickin' medical doctor that and thought it was a slam dunk, as if doctors don't go through like a decade of studying medicine and reading research papers. Sometimes, doing your own research doesn't actually mean doing research. It means only searching for vague information that validates your ideals. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? People who still insist vaccines cause autism because somehow autism is worse than literal death to them. I sold life insurance. Oftentimes people would buy critical illness or accident or disability insurance for their kids instead of life insurance because they couldn't fathom the idea of their child dying, but having to care for a disabled child or a sick one scared them. I also was a certified child car seat installer, and when talking to people about putting their kids in the right car seat and keeping them there longer, we were taught to talk about severe disability and disfigurement rather than death because the parents would just tune out death. If you're talking to people about the MMR vaccine, then personal stories about people with lifelong disabilities might be more effective than death. Probably still won't be effective at all, but I always try. After vaccination became the norm, deaths from infectious disease dropped far more than diagnosed cases of autism rose. Even if vaccines caused autism, which they don't, the rise in autism diagnosis mostly comes from better diagnostics, there is stark improvement over kids being killed by pertussis. The belief that alternate facts are a thing. Oh my god. Certain spelling or phrases like costed or I seen or could of, also raising their voice in an argument to just talk over everyone. Add casted to that. He was casted in the next Marvel movie. Failing in a logical argument, so resorting to emotions. Someone voting against their own best interests because their entire political worldview comes from quick sound bites and they don't do their own research. People don't even know what research is. If you can Google the answer, it's not research. Getting rid of PBS. Lack of or inability to empathize. Anti-vax. When their so-called research material is a bunch of unproven conspiracy theory nonsense. Someone exercising critical thinking and looking at the available information on a topic is never a bad thing. Facts should always stand up to being checked. My common sense. This is just a euphemism for not wanting to critically assess the issue at hand and consider expert guidance on how to proceed. Misusing uncommon words because they think it makes them sound smarter, when in fact it has the opposite effect. A few years ago, during a televised interview, a family member of an accused murderer attempted to refute the allegations. Rather than saying, "It's a myth," he deliberately chose the phrase, "It's a legend," seemingly in an effort to sound more intellectual. If someone thinks differently from them or holds to a different belief, then that person is 100% and unequivocally wrong all the time. My unemployed 35-year-old dropout cousin, 3 kids in a trailer Florida dweller, constantly posts memes about how he's street smart and doesn't need a degree. He thinks anyone with a higher education and career is brainwashed. He's constantly calling my mum and aunt for money for his kids. A MAGA hat. Not understanding the difference in meaning between loose and lose, losing and loosing. How the frick did people start confusing losing and loosing? When do you even loose in continuous tense? Racism. Hyper-religious and most evangelicals. People who jump on the hate whatever or whoever bandwagon because it's the flavor of the day. Automatically yelling and just repeating yourself when someone disagrees with you. I've noticed that racists are consistently some of the dumbest frickin' people on planet Earth, so that's my vote. The refusal to consider how the world varies from personal, anecdotal observations. This one goes for people on the left and right, agreeing with everything a celebrity or influencer or politician says. Another good one is not liking someone or their opinion because they said one thing you don't like while you agree with most of the other stuff. Poor grammar. Unable to accept somebody else's view or provide evidence to yours. People that still use the N-word. Being fooled by rage bait or propaganda. I mean, you say that, but you're not immune to propaganda. Assuming that people who fall for propaganda are less intelligent because it's so obvious to you is dangerous. You should always question your own beliefs. A lot of these answers are describing stupidity and entitlement more than a lack of education. Being married to someone from a third world country, I've met many of her relatives who've never been to school. A good example is when one of them asked me, a Jewish person, if I still visit my family back in Israel. I'm not from Israel, I've got no family there, and I've never even visited it. She assumed anyone who was Jewish came from there. Another example is watching them watch children's shows with my kids. They actually watch the shows to learn, like basic shapes, colors and things in English. They have very little understanding of the world. No idea how many continents there are, they don't understand simple finance like assets versus liabilities, and it's very apparent that they aren't stupid, they were just never taught these things. This is an incredibly important point. Just because people don't have access to schooling, that doesn't mean they can't be quick-witted, willing to learn, or open-minded, or emotionally intelligent. But unfortunately, there wouldn't be enough comments here to finish the video if we only picked the ones purely regarding a lack of education. So they're mixed in with the ones about general stupidity as well. Because boy oh boy can some people finish an education and still turn out dumb. Cruelty. Voting for that frickin' guy. Seriously, people who voted for him in 2024 after watching what he did for the last 9 or more years, what the frick? I've done my own research. No, you haven't. Confidently asserting things as facts of reality and then failing to elaborate or explain. People who play videos out loud in public restrooms? Lots of flags or stickers on your car or more likely truck. Nothing, because educated people can be morons and non-educated people can be smart and wise. Not understanding subject-to-verb agreement and/or verb tenses. Racism. Not reading books or saying that you don't like to read. I feel like people who say they don't like to read just get the totally wrong impression of reading from the public education system. Thinking that science denial or straight-up contrarianism is a sign of a free mind or critical thinking. Frick, insert name here, stickers on vehicles, and usually the subject of the curse is politicians. Never asking questions and having no curiosity, always having to win an argument instead of looking at conversations as an opportunity to learn. Well, since you asked, all of Trump's buddies, it's a fact that he even says he likes the uneducated. Making politics your entire personality. Hell, making almost anything your entire personality. Telling people bleach will cure COVID or promoting crackpot ideas to cure measles. He's going to loose the game. There are some words people just need to learn to spell. Vocabulary. Declaring an inconvenience as illegal. Refusing or refuting science as opinion, especially by saying, oh, it's just a theory. Driving like a psychopath. Talk without listening. Threatening physical violence or turning to insults when they lack the knowledge to defend their position. Making a political or intellectual statement and then refusing to cite sources or rely on others to back you up. Seen. I don't know about that one. I was raised in South Mississippi and Louisiana. I'm highly educated and even have an English degree, master's and graduated with honors, but I kept my accent and a lot of the regional dialect because it's just part of me. I know it's wrong, but I do it anyway because it's really organic for me. I don't say I seen, but I say a lot of things that are very grammatically incorrect. To be fair, many do assume I'm uneducated based on the drawl alone. When I was in college, I worked in a restaurant in New Orleans for years. We got a lot of tourists, and the combo of the drawl and being a server, many people treated me like I didn't speak English or something. They thought I was a complete idiot. Pronouncing the word nuclear as nuclear. Oh boy, that's like fingernails on a chalkboard. Cybertruck. People who walk around with their pants hanging below their asses with their underwear out. Driving a pickup truck with a lift kit, flying flags from every window, and political bumper stickers on every available surface. People who think Reddit represents the real world. Not understanding the difference between scientific research and doing your own research, aka watching YouTube videos and TikToks and reading posts on Twitter. Thinking watching a 5-minute YouTube video makes you more of an expert than actual experts. People who are always talking. They never stop to think. Flat Earth theorist people. Thinking that everything is a conspiracy because your fragile ego won't let you admit you don't understand anything in the real world. When someone yells, "Roll Tide!" The American president in 2025. Bringing politics into normal discussions. Anti-vaxxers. Worshipping the orange Cheeto. Displaying a Confederate flag. Getting mad when corrected instead of being open to learning. To be honest, any kind of bigotry, it's usually brought on by a lack of information and unwillingness to learn. Speaks in absolutes, inflexible in their beliefs, especially when faced with conflicting facts. What's the worst thing you've overheard about yourself while pretending to be asleep? I heard something like, "She's too old for this, I'm not going to carry her up to her bed anymore." And that was the last time I was magically transported from the living room couch to my bedroom. Oh, this is so sad. My son is nearly 13 and was 11 when I was last able to pick him up. When I did, I nearly threw my back out and realized this would be the last time I'd be able to carry him. I ended up sitting in his bed crying. I can still carry my daughter, who's 6 at least. In college, I woke up to my roommate's bed creaking. I shot up to see what the heck was going on. I see some woman on her bank with her legs fully spread eagle and my roommate just pile-driving it like it was his last day on Earth. Like a good bro, I quickly lay back down and pretended to be asleep. Then she said, in between gasps of air, "Is your roommate awake?" "Nah, he sleeps through anything." Cut to the next morning, I casually get up and turn on my PlayStation 2 and start playing some random game. The roommate's fling, who I now recognize in the light of day, gets up and casually comes over and sits next to me. "Good morning, John." Morning, Rachel." "Did you sleep good last night?" "Yeah, I can sleep through anything." As the last word left my mouth, I immediately realized I'd blown it. She began a huge flurry of slaps at my roommate while cursing at him. He didn't care because he was too busy laughing the whole time. I was a camp counselor. 2 girls very much liked to make hot or not lists. One of them suggested a male counselor was hot, and the other said he was saying mean things about me behind my back, which made him not hot. It hurt to hear that from my campers, but I'm glad they supported me. My mum was having an affair with her fiancé's best friend, who was married, in the same room that I was sleeping in. I was like 10 years old. My mum was driving around town late at night, probably trying to score, and I was asleep in the passenger seat. She stopped at a parking lot, I woke up and pretended to be asleep. This was back when payphones were in convenience store parking lots everywhere in the mid-90s. So there my mum was, on a payphone, begging her boyfriend for more smack. Last I heard, my mum is clean and doing well enough. I haven't talked to her in almost 20 years. It's healthier for me that way. My old roommate's planning to kick me out. I really squandered my advantage. I should have used my secret knowledge to get the drop on them and kick them out first. Haha, yeah, you did have a chance to do some maneuvering there and to go ahead and give the flat's collective notice to the landlord. I mean, that would be annoying for you too, but at least you wouldn't be surprised by it out of nowhere. Also, if you hadn't already had a clue, there are a lot of sad childhood revelations coming up in this video. My mum doing the deed with some random guy on my bottom bunk while I was on the top bunk. I was probably 8 or 9 at the time. I'm talking loud, vocal, crazy whoopee. Looking back, I assume she was either wasted or just didn't give a crap. Can't ask her now because I haven't seen her since I was around 12 or 13. Anyways, just thought I'd share. I overheard that I was dying of meningitis, but jokes on the doctors, I'm still kicking. You ever just live to flex on the haters? My family was staying at a friend's house and had to share a room. My dad comes to bed hammered and says to my mum something along the lines of, "Does it impress you that I'm this drunk and can still perform?" I mean, I actually wanted to not be alive anymore for that. "No wonder people at school think he's gay," said my stepmom. The person in the bunk bed under me just beating his own equipment like it owed him money. My mum trying to calm my dad down out of, shall we just say, a really dark place. My brother and I had been really bad that day, and when he grounded us, we both told him that we hated him and wanted him to go away. He hadn't done anything wrong, mind you, my brother and I were just a couple of immature little C-words. He walked into our room that night and I pretended to fall asleep. I'm pretty sure he was blackout drunk by this point, which I've never seen and still haven't seen since then. Then he just started these deep, haunting sobs that I'll probably never forget. He stumbled outside and we could hear him begging my mum to let him just end things and sobbing, "All I've wanted in my entire life was to be a better dad than mine." I was only 11 or so, but it fricking destroyed my heart. I think that's the time that I learned that emotional pain can actually physically hurt. I was hunched over in my bed, bawling my eyes out and on the verge of throwing up. I also felt like a butthole for crying over what we said. My brother was thankfully able to sleep through it all. I think about that once every 2 weeks or so, and I always message him to tell him I love him when I do. I hope he forgot about it, but being a dad myself now, I don't think it's ever something you totally forget. It might not hurt like it did in the moment, but I don't think you just kind of let that thing go. Like most heartbreaking things, I suppose. My parents discussing whether or not I was gay and exploring where they went wrong with raising me. Main suggestion was too many hugs. For the record, I'm straight and have done the deed with a bunch of girls. Take that, Mum and Dad. My friends talking about going into my wallet later and stealing my money, then leaving before I notice. I kicked them out. Before I got divorced, I was laying in bed late, 11 a.m. or so, on my day off, after a long string of I think 10 or so work days in a row. My ex, who refused to get a job, was in the next room playing a video game, and I heard him say, "That motherfrickin' witch is still sleeping." Ha! The motherfrickin' witch paying all the bills so you can sit on your butt 24/7? Yikes. I'm glad you got out of there. My mum and aunt talking, thinking 10-year-old me was asleep. I heard my aunt say, "Oh, little Jimmy is just so cute," followed by my mum opining, "No, he's actually not very good looking at all." Parents talking about plans for when they were going to do the deed. If memory serves, my dad coming home from work at lunchtime the next day to do it while we kids would be at school. When I got home from school that day, I just couldn't look my parents in the eyes. "Let mommy kiss you." No thanks, Mom." My sister's soon-to-be fiancé beating the old salami while saying her name. I guess at least he wasn't saying someone else's name. Not me, but my wife heard her boyfriend doing the deed with her best friend. This was obviously long before we met. My sister got drunk and I heard a loud thud and she blacked out. Two of her friends and my mum and dad were shouting at each other and they were saying to shut up because they didn't want to wake me up. And they were all crying thinking she had kicked the bucket, and I couldn't tell my sister I was happy she didn't die. Now I appreciate seeing her every week. My then stepmom's nephews talking about what they'd do to me in the bedroom if given the chance. Thankfully, the window to the motorhome was slightly open and my dad heard the entire thing. My dad ripped them a new one and that was the end of that, bar one clumsy fumbled attempt one night from one of them. The next day I told him I knew what he tried to do and I'd tell my dad if he didn't stop. He acted like he didn't know what I was talking about, but he never tried again. A year or so after that, they got divorced and I never had to see her or her horrible sons ever again. I was scared of boys for a long time after that. I overheard my dad and stepmom swinging with a couple of their friends. We were at a summer house and they did it in the living room. I felt so uncomfortable eating breakfast the next day. Probably the funniest one was a camping trip with the boys. I have sleep apnea and use a CPAP machine. I overheard a couple of my friends talking about smoking up some Mary J and hotboxing me through the air intake of my CPAP machine. On the other side of the coin, a friend of mine also slept with a CPAP. One night, the dog was sleeping right next to the table where the machine was sitting. The dog ripped a super noxious toot, which would have been fine. My friend should have been safe with his mask on, were it not for the fact that that toot got sucked up through the air intake. It woke him straight up out of a dead sleep, gagging and gasping for clean air. When I was a wee tot, I pretended to be asleep in the family room so I wouldn't have to actually go to bed, and once my parents were distracted, I could keep watching TV. I then got to hear my dad proposition my mum for couch whoopee. It's been many years, so I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of, "Hop on pop." Oh no. Oh no. I don't think anyone would have blamed you for sitting upright and just pretending to sleepwalk out of the room at that point. Unless this was one of those things that you didn't understand at the time and just slowly bloomed into a traumatic memory. Acted asleep while my family were talking amongst themselves about me getting married off to this girl who's educated, but 5 years older than me. We're talking about a literal arranged marriage, by the way, not just silly speculation. I was 15. When it was brought up, I outright rejected it because she was figuratively a big sister to me, always looking out for me. Then she got married and divorced after an absolutely horrible domestic situation for a few years. So I actually feel bad about that now. Sleeping over at a friend's house when I was 14, all of us on the floor in the living room. Couldn't sleep. Two of my friends, a guy and a girl, directly next to me started doing freaky things to each other. I was extremely shy and a couple of years younger than them, so I stayed quiet and just hoped that they'd stop. I had to listen to them for an hour while she made weird moaning, squeaky noises and he was singing, in a weird, slightly whispery, singy voice. I believe they were Matchbox 20 songs to her while he did whatever he was doing. And that was the last time I slept over at a friend's house. I wasn't pretending to be asleep per se, but I was well on the way. I was under anesthesia and I was fading in and out. I remember closing my eyes to help things move along. I was in a lot of pain because my appendix had ruptured. This happened years ago, so I can't remember all of the details, unfortunately. I remember being moved over to an operating table, and they told me to take my shirt off, I think. I heard someone go, "What do you think would happen if I poked her belly button right now?" I was an outie prior to having an appendectomy. They went through my belly button, so that's no longer the case. Anyway, someone very quickly responded, "Dude, that is not funny. Remember what happened last time?" It's possible I was starting to dream, but I remember it making me feel a mix of amusement and anxiety. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. On a class trip, I had a girl talk badly about me to the other girls in my room, saying that I was, in her words, a retard and too dumb to stand up for myself. She said the only reason she didn't bully me out of the school was because she needed me to help her with homework. Then my best friend stood up for me. She said that I wasn't dumb and just a bit shy, and then told her to F right off. I love the logic of, she's a retard but I need her to help me with my homework. What a dumb idiot thing to say. Well, I was overhearing my friends going south of the border on each other. I felt left out. My roommate and her friend with benefits having loud, dirty talk bedroom fun. I just had my wisdom teeth out and I think they assumed I was passed out on pain meds. I wish. My mum's boyfriend sloppily trying to F my mum, all while drunk as heck, whilst we're all sharing the same frickin' hotel room. I was 13. When I was around 18 years old, I was supposed to be asleep, but I snuck downstairs to get milk or something. I heard talking going on downstairs, so I stood still and listened. My mum was talking to my brother about how much of a problem I was and how she hated me. She always liked my brother more. I just silently crept back upstairs and cried myself to sleep. Good times. I wasn't pretending to be asleep so much as they assumed I was asleep. My in-laws thought I was still napping after dropping my kid off at school, and they started to talk crap about me. They said I was a terrible mum, that I didn't care about my kids at all, and they'd better buy a cake because I'd rather sleep all day than make him one. It was his birthday and my god, it was only 10 AM. It doesn't take that long to make and frost a cake. So I cried in my room for 2 hours before they left to buy groceries, by which I mean drink themselves into a stupor, before I got up and made the cake and birthday dinner that my child had asked for. I didn't tell my husband what they said until a week later because I didn't want to ruin his or my child's day. Had a bunk bed in college, and one night my girlfriend and I woke up to my roommate railing some chick on the top bunk. My girlfriend asked me what we should do and I just mumbled, "Just go back to sleep." Because I figured saying something to them at that moment would make things much more awkward. He still doesn't know. You two should have done the deed as well to assert dominance. Oh, my roommate's girlfriend begging for it in the butt, but not in a hot way. So for context, this was freshman year of college and my roommate for it was a nice guy in an incredibly toxic long-distance relationship with his girlfriend. She constantly called him and accused him of cheating. He never actually left the room except to go to class. I assumed she was cheating on him because why else would she constantly assume he was cheating when she had no evidence and he had never done it before? But I never paid attention to the details of the conversations. In fact, I only knew about the cheating accusations because she constantly logged into his Facebook and messaged me pretending to be him, trying to get me to say that he had cheated. Anyway, she visited. They went out on a date night and I went out drinking. I had a fight with the girl I'd been dating, so I went home and went to bed early. I was almost asleep when they came in, making out and all that. I was annoyed, but tried to sleep anyway. They were getting busy, and then it got weird. "You can put it in my butt," she said. Oh god. He was like, "Are you sure?" She says, "Yeah, John did it, so it's only fair. Plus you're smaller, so it will be easy." Wait, what? He says, "Yeah, come on." No, that's super effed up. Why would you say that? What the F? I thought we were past that. Well, mostly, but it felt like unfair to not let you. I don't want to. I don't even want to have to do that. Just go to sleep. She went on, now in a high-pitched pleading voice, "Please, don't be that way. Come on, it's no big deal." I don't want to. It continued back and forth until he finally relented. Then she goes, It's not even hard. Why isn't it hard?" And then they both cried, and I finally fell asleep. They dated for another 6 months. Oof. He ended up coming out of the closet, though not until senior year. He's now doing very well and is in a happy, healthy marriage as best as I can tell. Well, that was one heck of a journey, but at least we can be happy with where it ended up. I've had people in bunks above me have what sounded like very disappointing encounters together, and I can tell you that I shouted at them. Some of you really will expose yourselves to scarring and upsetting things rather than saying anything, huh? My walls were thin, I could hear almost everything. My parents argued in what they thought was a quiet voice about divorce. Then my dad says, "You can keep the kid, he annoys the frick out of me." The next week they told me and signed the papers. I don't really miss him much. He was a complete bully and made me miserable. I'd sneak out but couldn't bring my mum. That was the hardest. I'm sad but also glad that he's gone. Since I'm an adult, I don't have to see him ever again. I was at my boyfriend's apartment, staying over. His roommate also happened to have some friends who were dating there as well. I was in my boyfriend's room and they were sleeping in the living room. They were definitely doing the deed. Weirdest part of all of it was these literal banging sounds, like someone was hitting the frickin' wall. The whole time I had to go number one like a motherfricker, but getting to the bathroom involved walking by the living room and I did not want to risk that. When we woke up the next morning, somebody had ripped a chunk out of one of the curtains and the TV remote was snapped in half. To this day, I do not want to know what was going on in there. My grandparents won 10 grand at the casino, and they told all of their children and presumably gave them some of that money except for my dad. My dad's a jerk, so I didn't tell him either. Well, I heard my roommate's one-night stand dismount because apparently, "Your eggplant is hitting my bladder," and she waddled off for a pee before getting back on top. Good times. I was doing an all-nighter with the boys, gaming of course, and I fell asleep at some point playing Minecraft Creative, and I woke up to, "So, how often do you guys tickle your pickles?" Freshman college roommate watching adult movies on his laptop wearing headphones, thrusting against his mattress like there was no tomorrow. When I was like 10 or 11, I visited my dad, and while you were watching a movie, I tried to fall asleep, and I proceeded to hear him do the deed with his girlfriend on the bed that I was trying to sleep on. When I woke up, all I saw was his clothes on the floor. I don't know why I didn't just get up and leave, but at least I fell asleep before it really started. Roommate's boyfriend and his friend came into my room when they thought I was asleep. I was warm and I was sleeping undressed with minimal blanket coverage. I froze and pretended to stay asleep. They proceeded to talk about my body and how it was anyone's type. Also how easy it was to give substances to ladies these days. Oh, and also the friend talked about how easy it would be to steal or sell my boyfriend's boat motor that he'd stored in my room. Yeah, so they were kicked out and my friend became an ex-friend because she was teed off that I'd let my boyfriend kick them out. Dude, just do it. It's not like she'll remember. She's asleep. It's okay to touch her. This happened last night. I noped out of there so frickin' quick. I woke up the second I heard it and pretended to not hear anything. I just went to the kitchen to get water and then called my mum. I was sleeping in my friend's room while she was in the shower. Everything's okay. She understood and is very upset about it. I found out my dad's best friend had died. They'd been friends since they were literally 5 years old. They went to the same schools, stayed best friends for 50 years, and when he became an alcoholic and cut off contact with everybody, my dad still reached out to him multiple times, even though he obviously wasn't ready. He eventually got off the drink and they became really close again and were calling each other every day. I woke up to the phone ringing and my dad looking at it and immediately saying to my mum, "Oh God, I think he's dead." He knew that she only called when something bad was up, and he had been hospitalized multiple times because of his drinking. I remember saying years ago that I dread to think of the day that his best friend died because I knew it was coming soon because of his past. My dad is old and is the kind of guy who just wants a chat, and I know a lot of the people he talks to don't want to do that. Anyway, I heard it all unfold and pretended to sleep because I just didn't know what to say. I couldn't imagine losing a best friend for that long. I sat in my bed for hours thinking about it, but just laying still. I didn't fully process it until I went to work, and I spent nearly 2 hours crying in the toilets. That was the only time I cried in my entire adult life. My then-boyfriend opening up our bedroom door to show me off to his friends while I was sleeping. It was the middle of summer, so I was lying completely undressed on our bed. He thought I was asleep. Huge fight occurred the next morning, and we were not dating for long after that. What the frick, man? I'm just still so angry about that. You knew I was undressed. My grandma said she never had anything against blacks, but Mexicans, however. This was in a car during a road trip. We are Texans, Trump wasn't president yet, and I was young. She wasn't just hovering over my bed saying racist stuff, though. It's so far been the only racist thing I've ever heard her say. When I was a kid, I used to be scared of monsters or something creeping up on me in my sleep, so I would always ask my dad to check on me before he went to bed. It made me feel more comfortable. One night, I was still awake when I heard him coming up the stairs, and I wasn't supposed to be awake, and knew that I'd get into trouble if he saw me, so I pretended to be asleep. He came into my room and just kind of stared at me for a few seconds, then came up close to my bed, lifted the blanket, broke wind violently under it, turned around and left. It's been at least 15 years and I remember that night vividly. He vehemently denies it to this day, but I know what happened. Policeman. What crime was so cool that you didn't want to arrest the criminal? I had a case in my first year as an officer where a drunk man launched his car off a boat ramp. We approximated that he was going about 50 miles per hour and the car landed in 20 feet of water. Now for the cool part. He swam out, ran 8 miles to his uncle's house and stole his tow truck. He then drove said truck back, swam down and hooked the tow cable to the axle of the car, and proceeded to pull the tow truck into the water as well. We were called on scene and we could only see the headlights and the tip of the hood above the water. He was passed out asleep on the dock next to it. A friend of mine used to be a dealer, and for some reason he spent his money on reptile habitats. Giant glass enclosures connected by tunnels with plant life everywhere, dozens of different reptiles living in a lush green world. When he got busted, the cops were calling other cops to come take a look. Some of them even went to get cameras. This was in the 90s, by the way. They were just so blown away by what they were seeing. Of course, they still arrested him, but in the cops' eyes, he'd become a cool reptile guy instead of just another substance dealer that they were arresting. Oh, this one always gets me. In my city, a homeless man was breaking into homes by lockpicking. Nothing unusual with that. However, what he did was brilliant. He'd wait until he knew the times people wouldn't be home, and he'd clean their homes for them. He averaged a week or so per home going unnoticed. The first few homes he was never caught, but signs of a home invasion were reported to us. On the house he did get caught in, he used the defense that he was cleaning a home that he was hired to clean and mistakenly got the house wrong and the door was, quote, left open. He was armed with nothing but a cell phone. He made fake email correspondence to back his claims from a client with a similar address. He was able to, overall, unproven but speculated, stay for upwards of a month in homes. In court, his defense was actually successful in my opinion because the other cases he couldn't be linked to and he was only prosecuted for the one. Then with his defense, his lawyer only got him 14 days in jail. The guy never took anything outside of food. He'd clean the house, eat, shower, and nap, and then just leave. House cleaning for the price of a pizza? Come on, sign me up for this guy's services. Yeah, I mean sure, the idea of a homeless man sleeping in my bed is a bit uncomfortable, but if I know that he's using my shower and laundering his own pajamas, and if I think of him as a professional cleaner paid in food and board for his services, maybe I can start to come around to the idea. It's all about how you present your services, folks. My uncle is a cop in Philly. They arrested a guy who one night put up a 20-foot-long, 10-foot-high mosaic mural. Well, Johnson, this has to be the most beautiful F the Police mural written in gigantic male reproductive organs that I've ever seen. Color me impressed. My friend is a police officer in Berlin. He and his colleague were sent to an incident of domestic violence. A guy was beating up his wife and the neighbors called the police. When they arrived at the scene, they found the son of the wife beating up his stepfather, who was trying to fight back, but was just catching one hit after the other. The son made sure not to hit his stepfather's face, and when asked why later, he said, "I didn't want him to go unconscious. I wanted this to last. Also, that would have been unfair as he never hit my mom where other people could see her bruises either." A cool dude police guy stopped me for speeding one Christmas day many years ago. I was late for my night shift at work, so I was in a hurry. When he stopped me, I was thinking, oh crap, I'm a big black guy in a BMW with tinted windows. Surely this looks dodgy as hell. I live in the UK. After apologizing, explaining, and showing him my details, he knew that I was legit and not trying to pull a fast one, so he said, "Alright then, follow me." And he put his police car light on and helped me speed through the traffic to be at work on time for a night shift. To this day, I see him around and I buy him a beer in the local pub whenever I can. This will probably get buried. My uncle was a state trooper in Oregon and pulled over a group of downhill skateboarders for speeding in a 40 miles per hour zone. Apparently they were clocked going close to 60 miles per hour down a gradual decline, and apparently they were even passing most of the cars. He didn't write them a ticket because he was just flat out impressed that their massive family jewels didn't slow them down. Pretty legendary. We used to have this campus police officer who'd come chill at a picnic table with us while we smoked the electric lettuce. He said he loved the smell and enjoyed being around us while we were getting goofy. That and we weren't drunks destroying everything in our path like the rest of the students. Come to think of it, my college was liberal as all heck. This was 12 years ago in northeast Pennsylvania. Mary J was essentially legal on my campus, but they really enforced the rules against underage drinking. Makes me think of Harry Redford, also known as Captain Starlight. He was on trial for stealing cattle, but the jury was so impressed with the feat that they found him not guilty. The judge asked the jury to reconsider. The jury came back out and stated, "Not guilty, and he can keep the cattle." The judge was appalled. The government then shut down that district court for 2 years based on the verdict. I'm not a cop, but my dad was. He pulled over the local ice cream truck in my town because the driver failed to stop at the stop sign. While reviewing his papers, he realized the guy's license is expired, and his permits to operate the ice cream truck hadn't been renewed yet that summer. Instead of writing him ticket after ticket and essentially ruining this man's yearly income, he gave him 2 weeks to sort it out. Ice Cream Man got all of his stuff in order, and at the end of the summer dropped off 4 massive boxes of ice cream to our house as a thank you. I've never eaten so many screwballs in my life. My mum once got pulled over by a nice cop around Christmas time for a busted tail light. She was on her way to get it fixed anyway. The officer walked up to her window and told her to pick a hand. She picked one and he gave her a card saying, "Merry Christmas," and left without giving her a ticket or anything. I was a rookie in the early 80s. I was dispatched on a disturbance call, and when I arrived, there was a guy on the ground and a woman was pummeling him with a baseball bat. I ran up and grabbed her, took the bat, and handcuffed her. I called an ambulance for the guy, and the woman was crying and saying, "You don't understand. He committed the unspeakable act on me last year." I was a little incredulous, but checked it out, and sure enough, he did have an outstanding warrant for the R word. I had dispatch pull up the report, and you guessed it, she was the victim. The EMTs checked him out, and he was very bruised but not really injured. I took the cuffs off her and slapped them on him, and told her thank you for the assist on the arrest. He went straight to jail, did not pass go, nor collect $200. I'm not a cop, but I've been let go by the cops a number of times when I was a wild youth. First, there were the many times I just walked calmly past the cops busting a house party. They were too busy having fun chasing the kids running or hiding. Another time, I was out joyriding with my friend soon after the 4th of July. We were in a rural area and had some fireworks in the car. We hadn't seen a car for miles, so I had the brilliant idea of Roman candle jousting. I held the candle outside and shot out above and in front of the car, so we'd drive through the sparks. It was great watching all the colorful bursts shower over the windshield. We did 2 candles, and then we decided we'd do 1 more and be done. For that last candle, we passed a dark car on the side of the road for the last round of sparks. Quickly, we realized that the car was following us so fast, so my friend put the pedal down to get away. I think we got up to 70 before the cop lights came on, and we realized we were doomed. We immediately pulled over, of course. In the end, the cops confiscated our fireworks and told us we'd be receiving civil fines in the mail. Those fines never came. Tommy Fitzpatrick. In 1956, he stole a small plane from New Jersey for a bet and then landed it perfectly on the narrow street in front of the bar that he had been drinking at in Manhattan. 2 years later, he did it again for someone that didn't believe he'd done it the first time. I bet the cops that arrested him were very impressed. Heck, he didn't even end up getting that much of a punishment for either crime. The first time ended up being only $100 fine, since the charges were dropped by the owner of the plane, and the second resulted in only 6 months of jail time. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I was pulled over for speeding on my bike once. They seemed quite impressed by my pace when they saw the old bike I was riding on and just gestured me to leave without even stopping. I think how cool or rad this one is rests on whether it was an old motorbike or an old bicycle. Except, can you be arrested for speeding on the latter? I think even if you could, they'd probably just want to pull you over to see how you were doing that. Cool story anyway. Next up, a mega one. In short, tale of an old boyfriend's misspent youth, sticking it to the man and in the process gaining the grudging respect and admiration of the baconator who busted him. I have a cool story about an ex-boyfriend and his crazy cop and criminal camaraderie. He was brilliant but kinda messed up. When he was in his early 20s, he got into crystal, and thar she blew. He ended up homeless, dumpster diving for food and sellable items or whatever else he could get his hands on. One day, he found a set of lockpicks in a little leather case. He immediately hit up the library, and through books and the library's free computers and internet, he set about teaching himself to pick locks. The thing about Crystal is, it makes you incredibly single-minded. But this guy was also the type where, if he became interested in something, then he dove deep into full-on obsession. He started spending all of his time with locks. Then he started making keys. I don't know how many of you have had experience hanging around in substance dens, but he was the guy in the corner bent over a Dremel for 2 days straight. Soon, no lock could keep him out. Still, he had his morals somewhat intact at this point, so armed with his new skill, he just decided to go after parking meters. He figured that because said parking was instituted in World War II to pay for the war effort, then never taken offline as promised by the various state powers, he was stealing from the man. He soon branched out to vending machines and coin-operated laundry machines too, though that was later. He'd somehow steal a parking meter, either by bashing it over with a crappy car, then tossing it into the trunk and speeding off, or painstakingly hacksawing the metal pole. Some meters were just locked to the pole, so he'd just pick that lock and make off with the head. He'd then abscond with his prize to a secluded location, usually a flophouse, and set about copying the keyway. Because the meters in our town at the time only had 3 or 4 master keys, he soon had a homemade key to every meter in the city. It was then as simple as rolling up to each meter on a street, opening it, pulling out the cup of change, dumping it into a heavy-duty duffel bag, putting it all back the way he found it, and moving on to the next one. He was pulling in $3 to $4 grand every time he went out. He targeted private parking lots too, because to him, they were the worst of the worst. They were also, incidentally, the motherlode because they had larger coins and bills in them. He soon became very popular. He'd pay people to spot or block sightlines and drive him around, and the word got out. He was the man, because when you have several $1,000s every night, you're the life of the party. With this positive attention came the negative, however. One story that comes to mind, there was this up-and-coming substance lord called the Fat Persian. I've changed the nationality for privacy reasons. My ex often scored from this guy. TFP was delighted by the way my ex-boyfriend was Robin Hooding around and sticking it to the man and pulling in fat stacks of money. Dollar signs flashed in TFP's eyes. Or cents, anyway. So, TFP came up with a plan. This particular night finds my ex at a flophouse, holding court in the corner with his trusty Dremel. Someone hands him a phone. On the other end is the urgent sotto voice of a girl he knows. A girl who hung out at TFP's place a lot. "Get the hell out of there right now. They're on their way for you. You have maybe 5 minutes. Go." Before my ex could ask questions, she had already hung up. He handed back the phone, stuffed his tools into his backpack, and quietly deked out the back door, and ran through the backyards to get as far away as possible. 4.8 minutes later, the door was kicked in, and men with balaclavas and various weapons stormed the place. It was a multi-level house, stuffed with people in various stages of tweak and nod, so it took a while to get everyone on the floor in one room, and realized that my ex was nowhere to be found. "Where the F is he?" "We don't know, he was just here minutes ago, man." A full-blown SWAT-style check of the place ensues. With their plan foiled, my ex-boyfriend's would-be kidnappers and assailants broke some stuff, hit a few terrified bystanders, and then just left. The plan was to abscond with the brain, take him to some dank basement, handcuff him to a radiator or what have you, shoot him up with stuff 24/7, and force him to make keys until he could no longer function. And then, who knows? Dispose of him in some grisly fashion, most likely. Later, when confronted, over the phone if I recall correctly, TFP was like, "Come on, buddy. You can't blame a guy for trying, can you?" No hard feelings, huh? I digress. Stuff was getting real wild. Anyway, the cops, the city, and the private parking companies were also doing the math and realizing that somebody was ferreting into their cash receptacles and getting away scot-free. After numerous arrests, near misses, and run-ins, the Baconators knew who their guy was. It was just a matter of catching him red-handed. The owner of one of the main monopolist private parking companies began staking out his own properties. He parked in his lots overnight every night for a month, waiting and watching. He always managed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, though. He'd be in one lot while my ex was in another across town monkeying around with his stuff, and so on and so forth. Finally, parking dude caught and apprehended my ex with his hand in the change jar, called the cops, and crowed with delight. And then he probably slept the best sleep of his life, or at least since my ex began his reign of terror. The parking dude couldn't deny the ingenuity and straight-up wiliness displayed by my ex, though, and had to hand it to the guy. Same with the cops. One cop in particular, the guy that my ex had the most dealings with, was also gleefully flabbergasted by the pear on this kid. In the interrogation room, you'd have sworn the two were old buddies laughing over beers. reminiscing about the good old days. So, that night we were chasing you and you disappeared, where the frick did you go? We were totally stymied, it's like you teleported away. Oh, you know that bush besides the house on Street and Avenue? I hid in there till you guys left. No crap, we must have walked past that damn bush 20 times. Oh yeah, I was doking in my Batman underoos for sure. Oh, check this out. This was the meeting I was at a few weeks ago with the mayor, chief of police, and parking commissioner. The mayor goes, "What are we going to do with this kid with the keys?" The parking commish says, "Well, we've already changed the locks on 30% of the meters." And the police chief pulls out a ring with a bunch of janky homemade keys on it, selects a key and holds it up. "You mean these locks?" Commissioner goes, "Oh, well, we've introduced a new virtually pick-proof lock in a few meters. We've only managed to install it on a few meters, but..." Police chief pulls out another key from the ring and holds it up, eyebrow cocked. Parking commissioner goes, "I see." Police chief selects another 3 keys from the ring and fans them out. "Are you going to tell us about these new unbreachable locks now?" Mayor and parking commissioner go in unison, "Ah, crap. Are you going to get this guy or what?" I mean, it was priceless. We were so teed off. We were all certain the parking commissioner was going to get fired along with the rest of us. Oh man, that's so awesome. They ended up becoming friends, especially after my ex got out of the last long stretch of jail during that time and decided to straighten up. When the ex got out, parking dude tracked him down and hired him as a security consultant. When that gig ended, he hired him on as a meter reader. That job was really too hard for him to do from a moral perspective though. Suddenly he was working for the man, doing his bidding, and the cognitive dissonance was too much. He stayed clean for about 8 years and regularly met up with the cop for beers or coffee, and they always had a ball reminiscing about the good old, bad old days. This was around the time he and I reconnected. We were street urchins together in our early teens, or my early teens and his late ones. He was 4 years older than me. We got together, I cleaned up from my substance of choice, and we had a happy few years before stuff started going sideways. He's not doing all that well these days, but I've managed to stay clean for 5 years as of yesterday. That's another story though. Let's just say things got spectacularly terrible for both of us before they got better. Well, that was certainly an epic story with the promise of a sequel. You can't really hate this guy for his specific crime, to be honest. What a delightful public menace. And only a menace to the people making an absolute racket off the meters. Well, I'm actually the guy that the cop let go. I was flying down a notoriously steep hill on a neighborhood street on my bicycle. I had the wind at my back and a huge smile on my face as I blew through a stop sign near the bottom. But then a cop goes flying by, all lit up with sirens blaring. Runs up the road of ways past full blast. There are clear streets there. Flips everything off and pulls over to wait for me there. Waved me over when I got to him. "Did you just blow through a stop sign up there?" Yeah, sorry man." "Ah, crap, I was looking for a porch or something. Do you know how fast you were going?" "I know how much fun I was having." I tried a goofy smile. 64 miles per hour is nearly triple the speed limit." He shook his head. "That is so reckless." Starts to lecture me on fines, penalties, and insurance. Heck, a judge might even impose jail time. He thinks for a minute and then continues. "You could have killed someone." Pauses a bit, grins almost imperceptibly. "My record on that hill is 57. I went from almost peeing myself to relief in a single heartbeat. I got a pretty good run out at the top, and I think the wind was at my back today. Next time, stop at the intersection." He gets in his car and drives away. I always stop at that intersection, now. When I was 14, I smoked because I was such a cool guy, you know? Figured my mum didn't know because teenagers are just so sneaky. My mum was dating a cop, and on date night, she left and jokingly said, "No smoking in the house." Well, a few hours later, I went to the apartment quad for a smoke, and my mum and police boyfriend came home early. She yells, "Are you smoking?" And I was a little crap bag, so I was like, "Yeah, you said don't do it in the house." Her boyfriend was like, "Well, technically speaking, he has your parental permission to smoke as long as he doesn't do it inside. So I don't even need to do anything." We did eventually have a talk about the dangers of smoking and all that jazz, which totally didn't take because I was eventually detained by campus police at 16 for smoking on campus during school hours. I got 30 hours of community service. Look up the story of the Barefoot Bandit. Basically, a kid who lived in the woods and evaded the FBI for a good long while. He taught himself to fly planes that he stole through trial and error. By error we mean crashing, and I think the FBI ultimately hired him after catching him in Florida after getting there from his home in Washington state. I've seen cops blind-eye me beating up my pursuers using gauntlets and Goonies-esque anti-bully equipment. What the hell? You know, most cops are super chill if you've got a solid reason for doing what you did. Ice Cream Lady flipped off my kid and another of the neighbor's kids. They told me, so I went and confronted her, obviously lying, so I egged the crap out of her car while I was talking to her. She called the cops, one of them came and questioned me about it. I told him I egged her crap and why I did it. He just kinda laughed and asked me to rinse off her windshield. Not all cops are jerks, my dudes. My uncle, who's a police officer, told me of these guys trying some insane skateboarding tricks on some private property. They were also smoking green herb. This one guy was trying to land a crazy trick that he didn't really know about. My uncle told him he had 3 chances to do it, and if he did, he'd let them go with a warning. If not, they'd get fined. The guy lands it on his 3rd try, and they all skate away. This wasn't mine, but a few years ago in Philly, there was this gentleman known as the Swiss Cheese Bandit who'd pull up along young women and ask them to tickle his pickle with a piece of Swiss cheese, with his pickle already out, which is what moves this from just a weird thing to a felony. Well, if I recall correctly, he eventually tried this on a group of female Catholic school students, not knowing that the kids in Philly are absolute savages, and so they promptly chased him down and beat the ever-loving crap out of him until the cops showed up. There were no charges filed against those girls. Good call. I have a story where the cops were raiding a house next to a house party I was at when I was 16. At the house party, people screamed, "Cops!" And I remember walking out with a case of beer and seeing the cops and trying to be sneaky by putting down the beer and walking away. But then within a second, one of the cops yells at me, "Hey kid, you're just gonna leave that case of beer there?" And I'm just dumbfounded like, is this a trick in my head? But I grabbed the case and walked away. I'm assuming the cops had a bigger bust at that house that they were raiding, and they didn't give a crap about a teen with beer. I'm now 25, and looking back, I'm just like, whoa. McDonald's employees. What secrets of the Golden Arches did you discover there? My first day on the job, I was told to be on the lookout for the elderly gentleman who'd try to sneak around the corner and pour the entire coffee pot into his mug while everyone was too busy to stop him. I caught him in the act almost immediately. Sauces for sandwiches have the craziest dispensers. Ketchup and mustard are in these really rudimentary plastic funnel things that have a paddle in the handle, and when you squeeze it, gravity pushes the right amount of sauce through the holes. It doesn't seem like it would work well, does it? But it does if you apply the proper amount of jiggling. The mac sauce, mayo, and tartare, though, they're basically in cork tubes that get loaded into basically cork guns. You pull the trigger on the handle and a really satisfying ratchety clanking delivers a powerfully saucy surprise for the awaiting buns. Problem is, though, it takes a bit of finesse because if you hit that trigger too hard, you'll blow the bun and a wad of cream right through the condiment station and onto the wall 8 feet away. No joke, the first couple of tartar splurts on a fresh tube came out so hot, I'd fire a shot or 2 in the trash to avoid premature splatulation of the lunch rush. The first salvo, properly elevated and adjusted for the wind, could clear the whole kitchen and take out the McInfantry on the cash register. Depending on which one you work at, the parking lot is basically a meetup for addicts and dealers and, at least where I was in New Mexico, for people to meet up and do the deed in their cars. As long as they kept their business to the middle of the night and didn't cause any serious problems, we were told to not call the cops or make a fuss, mostly because they'd come in and buy their food after their shenanigans. Soda and mini pies were really popular with the smack addicts. What I later found out was that management was actually told to let it slide by corporate, since everyone higher up was aware of how much money the night crowd bought in. I got to see many deals go down. I'm convinced that I saw at least one arms deal, but of course I'd have no way of verifying that. If you drop any unopened chicken nugget sauce on the ground once, you've got yourself a sauce grenade. Trash compactor can make for some fun explosions too. We had a Volpack of ketchup that needed to be tossed for whatever reason, and somebody didn't realize that that shouldn't go into the compactor. I got back after hearing a bang and a scream. The guy is just caked in ketchup, and it shot up out of the barrel of the manual compactor and painted the wall, ceiling, and bun rack. They have since taken away the Volpacks. For all that I'd never go back to working at that place ever again, I've got to say that these days I really appreciate how precision some of the equipment and supplies were. The sauce guns, the flawlessly packed custom patties and deep fryables, and the compactor. God, I miss crushing things and occasionally getting fun surprises like this. Industrial equipment is cool, folks. Worked there in high school. I found out that if you put the middle of a Big Mac bun in the fryer and then add soft serve and strawberry topping, it tastes just like a funnel cake. Custom creations were the best part of working there. Cheeseburger bun, fried, add the chai latte powder. You got yourself a cinnamon donut, my friend. Former employee here, I found out when making 5 gallons of sweet tea that an entire 4-pound bag of sugar goes in. Sandwiches with a round egg use real cracked eggs. Folded and scrambled come from packaged goods in the freezer or fridge. I also had a manager that insisted more people purchase filet-o-fish when it's raining because they subconsciously associate the watery weather with fish. Anyway, he did some research by poring through sales of filet-o-fish for months and comparing it to weather data for each day. Turns out he found something like a 3% increase on rainy days and was very pleased with himself. The manager voiced his theory one day and the crews all argued with him about it. This went on for a while. He was committed to proving us wrong, so he secretly pulled the sales numbers at work and did the rest on his own time, never breathing a word until he brought his printed report in to shut us all up. He did separate Fridays during Lent and compared those days to each other in anticipation of having holes poked in his research. We still did that anyway, of course. As pointless and imperfect as the research was, it was impressive to see his commitment to giving us the middle finger. My manager used to be on my back all the time for giving out too much sauce. He tried telling me the limit is 1 per meal. I'm based in the UK. Our portions are generally smaller here, but I'd still give out as many sauces as possible because screw being stingy. The official deodorizing spray, which you use on the bathrooms or the ball pit to make them smell better. It was the most pleasant thing that I've ever smelled in my entire life. Even now, I wish I could smell it again. I learned that if I have time to lean, I have time to clean. You got time to text, you got time to Windex. You got time to flop, you've got time to mop. I know that the second 2 phrases are people joking around, but whoever coined that first phrase has a special spot reserved in hell. Cool story. I worked there in my teens for a couple of years. Actually worked at 2 different locations, so I saw the difference in standards. At one store, there was a guy who always rode his bike to the store every single day to hang out. He was on the spectrum, slow, and McDonald's was his kind of castle. Everybody knew him and he got a lot of free food from the employees. He was a daily part of the shift for us. Anyway, one day he'd had too many root beers. This was a thing he normally did, because he pretended the root beers were real beers and he'd get drunk. Everyone kind of would go along with it because it was funny and he never did anything too wild. Unfortunately, this day he took it a little too far and ended up in the parking lot throwing bottles at cars driving by. So long story short, the guy was arrested and he was banned from that McDonald's for life. I kind of felt bad about it because that McDonald's was his favorite place to be. He'd pull through at 3 or 4 on his bike and stay and hang out with his employees until like 8. Every single day. Before that one bottle incident, one of the managers even made his own little parking spot for his bicycle. He was happy as a clam. I think about that guy sometimes. I hope he's found himself a new McDonald's. I worked at McDonald's when they first introduced sweet tea and remember that it was brewed in a large bucket, mixing hot water with a full bag of granulated sugar. It makes me sick to think about it, but I still sometimes crave that disgustingly sweet, tasty garbage. Dehydrated onions. You put them in a metal thing and you just add water. The thing is, they still taste great, but I was shocked and just happy that I didn't have to go cut onions. Man, reading these, I'm wondering why McDonald's is so boring. We don't spit on anything. The stuff that needed to be kept clean is kept clean, although I'll admit if it wasn't required, it would be filthy. The ice cream worked fine, food wasn't undercooked, on occasion it was overcooked, and employing high school kids, of course they're going to make some mistakes, but there was never anything too bad. My time wasn't bad. We kept it clean and nobody I ever knew of tampered with the food. But there were a lot of funny things that happened, so I have a lot of stories. For example, one day we had 10 minutes to close. It was myself off at close, the grill closer, the service closer, and the manager. Grill closer had on a headset, as he was praying nobody else came in, and he was very low on a few things and didn't want to make more right before closing. The guy prided himself on having things done and being out the door within 10 minutes of closing. The bosses loved him because other closers took up to an hour, and that meant paying them for up to another hour. One good thing to know is that our headsets had 2 buttons. One talked to that other headset only, the other one talked to the outside speaker. He had been playing a game where he was trying to make the service worker laugh while she was taking the orders. So you can probably see where this is going. So a driver pulls up to the speaker. He orders a 20-piece nugget bag. The closer is teed off and pushed the talk to other headset button and goes, "Man, frick that stupid frickin' order. Frick!" Except, of course, he hit the wrong button. Needless to say, somebody got a free 20-piece pack and another free meal in the future, and grill members were banned from wearing headsets for a little while afterwards. I worked at McDonald's Australia. Back when we had the old cheeseburger buns, before McDonald's got healthy, we used to scrunch up the buns and deep fry them in the fry vat. covered them in sugar, and you'd end up with something a little like a donut. I started working at Mackie D's when I was 15. The secret is that it's probably one of the cleanest restaurants in your city. The standardizations and routine practices leave little room for employees to think for themselves. It's a way cleaner restaurant than the $30 to $50 per person place I'd work at later. True, true, and true. Say what you will about the place, but it's about as sanitary as it's possible to be in the food industry. If you let your standards slip, the chances of you getting away with it for long are next to zero, in case you're working out in Nowhereville, abandoned Bama. I worked in one from 2000 to 2005. During this time, they changed the bacon. The new bacon was not as good. During this time, they changed the shake mix. The new shake mix wasn't as good. The shake machine works fine, so long as someone remembers to fill it before it gets too empty and goes into an automatic 90-minute self-clean mode. It also takes a very long time to start up, so if somebody forgets, there's no shakes for 30 minutes. This was never a problem for me. Whenever I did opening shift, I'd kick off the coffee brewing for my team, then start up the shake machine for myself. The chocolate chip cookies and McGriddles taste amazing if you eat them fresh out of the oven. I always made an extra half tray for myself. Not really a secret, but when I'm on wrap, as in wrapping the food, and I get nuggets, I might slip an extra 2 or 3 in because I like the thought of someone getting hype over an extra nug or 2. The Big Mac is just a double cheeseburger with Thousand Island dressing, lettuce, and an extra piece of bread. If you order a double, add lettuce and Big Mac sauce, you get the same thing with less bread and a cheaper price. Okay, I've been made aware that I was inaccurate in my assessment of Big Mac sauce, and have just checked to make sure. In my defense, 20 years back, I'm old, I am positive it was just Thousand Island dressing. The McDonald's that I worked at kept a very clean kitchen and front line. I worked in restaurants that were privately owned, and the food standards, throwing out old food and cleanliness, just weren't the same. I was very surprised with how much Macca's constantly made us clean. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I worked at McD's in high school. This was in the 90s. The store I worked at had incredibly high standards. I was taught proper customer service skills, how to de-escalate a situation, time management, cleaning skills, people skills, and so much more. I thrived there because I was lacking adult role models anywhere else in my life. My managers made sure I was caught up on my homework, helped me study, made sure I was eating, because even though it was fast food, it was better than no food. I made some of the best friends I've ever had, and I'm still friends with them to this day. I can truthfully say that working there saved my life in high school. McD's has a very thorough training program for managers. I was fast-tracked to management, and at 18 they put me through Hamburger University, the McDonald's training site in Illinois. That was quite an experience. I ended up leaving McD's at 19 to go be a young adult and try new jobs. I don't have any trade secrets to share so much, so I'll just say this. Don't knock the kids or people working fast food. Don't make fun of them or laugh at them or make them feel bad. They're learning valuable skills that will serve them later in life. They're doing what they can to earn money. They're serving you the junk food you want while learning how to grow up to be a successful adult. Sure, not everyone fits that description, but more people do than you think. 10-to-1 burger patties. Every 10-to-1 is 1/10 of a pound of beef. These go in most of the smaller burgers. A McDouble and a Big Mac have the same amount of beef in them. The difference between them is the Mac sauce instead of ketchup and mustard, the middle bun, sesame seeds, and lettuce. The difference between a double cheeseburger and a McDouble is 1 slice of cheese. McRibs are the messiest sandwich we had to make. In addition to cooking it, the McRibs stewed in their sauce in the universal heating cabinet until used. That required a special pair of tongs because it was pork, and cross-contamination applies to religious stuff as well. No matter how careful you were, you always made a mess. Burrito mix came pre-cooked and frozen. You wrapped a slice of cheese with the stuff, and it was put in a queuing oven, which was a glorified microwave until hot. That's it. No real cooking done. Breakfast breads were the easiest back-end position during breakfast. Things just took time. McGriddle buns were baked and frozen, and then thrown into the queuing oven to make them soft. Biscuits were queued and then baked. Bagels and muffins were toasted. McDonald's uses beef fat, if I recall correctly, for their fryers. When the oil was new, it was literally white until it got hot. A patch of sweet tea took 5 pounds of sugar for 5 gallons of tea. You could feel the cavities as you made it. The grilled chicken took the longest to cook and was kind of a pain in the butt. Some of the pieces of chicken could be in the universal heating cabinet for hours before finally being tossed. And that's all I've got for now. I can never forget working breakfast. Those sandwiches need to be cheese, then meat, then egg. If the cheese is next to the egg, it makes the egg slip out. If you want a good replacement for Big Mac sauce, 3 big tablespoons of good quality mayo, about a single good tablespoon of ketchup, 2 teaspoons of gherkin relish, 1 tablespoon or so of pickle juice, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, half to 1 teaspoon of turmeric, mix till thoroughly combined, and leave in the fridge to let the ingredients make friends with one another overnight. I worked at McDonald's in high school for a couple of months before going to Burger King. McDonald's had more stuff to make things faster, like the cool ketchup and mustard dispensers and the fry dispenser. I liked working at both places though. Mostly kids my age, I had a blast making $5.15 an hour. A couple of Mormon missionary guys came in one time and ordered their food. They also ordered French fries with no salt, so the fries had to be fried specially with no salt. They told me it was their tactic to get hot fries. There are 2 sorts of missionaries, the hopeful, fresh-faced, idealistic ones, and the ones who are actually good at converting people, or as I call them, the con artists. Seriously, I've worked in door-to-door sales, and there's very little difference between a good missionary and a good door-to-door salesman. And wouldn't you know it, these con artist missionaries are really good at getting what they want in a variety of situations, including getting hot fries, I guess. At time of writing, there's a glitch in the McDonald's app. There's a deals section, and it usually has a coupon for a free cookie or free apple pie with any order. Add it to your order, and you get the free cookie. Then, the next time you order from the app, just reorder your last meal, and you can add or subtract whatever you want, but the free cookie should still be there. The glitch is that you can add another free cookie from the deals section, and now you have 2 free cookies. Evidently, there's no cap to this. I now get 5 free cookies with each order. I've stopped at 5 because I felt that any more than that would be overkill. And now they'll have killed this by the time it goes on the internet. You know, it's an effed up mess of cogs and gears that still has some effed up way of working, said an ex-worker of McDonald's whom I know. All drinks come in as a syrup and are carbonated on the spot, hence why it can taste flat sometimes. There used to be a way to get a discount code for every second that the timer was running on a coupon, but they patched that in 2017. The ice cream machine at my place usually broke down because people mixed up the milkshake bags with blue caps and the ice cream bags with red caps while filling the machine. Mismanagement is surprisingly common, and corporate doesn't give a single crap as long as there's sufficient profit coming in. You know, I don't have much tea to serve, honestly. I worked there for over a year. Everything's cleaned properly, nobody messes with the food, because there's always a manager nearby. The food is rather fresh. While a lot of the stuff is frozen, that doesn't make it bad. Only thing is, the tea is very easy to screw up. It's easy to accidentally leave the spout open and have tea covering the floor. Once we had a bag of coffee break and it got into the ice, and into the tea too, and we didn't realize right away, so some people got some coffee in their tea. When it comes to allergies though, everyone I worked with was very diligent. If somebody had a bad allergy to, like, bread, we'd remove our gloves, wash our hands or arms, put on new gloves and make sure the item was okay. Given that was probably the case because we didn't want a lawsuit. Another secret is how much food McDonald's wastes. We had a bucket to toss the food in, and managers had to count it at the end of the day. It was disgusting to see how much perfectly edible food was being thrown out. Luckily, if your manager was a cool person, you could ask to eat it in the back quickly. This was especially the case with the pies. Frankly, the company was fine. They offered to give you scholarships, paid for you to get your diploma if you didn't have one, always paid above minimum wage, though sometimes barely, and it was easy to get a promotion if you asked and put in the work. That being said, I still hate corporations, and the franchise owners were buttholes who ignored a bunch of stuff. Customers threw their food at me if something was wrong, like not enough salt, and I had minor burns from some of the work. Sometimes I was told I was a massive C-word and I should KMS. The list goes on, and also, you're not allowed to take tips. Order an apple pie and a cup of ice cream and run that SOB through the McFlurry mixer together. You can thank me later. I've never worked in any fast food restaurant, but where I am, McDonald's on your resume, especially as a young blood fixin' to get another job at a young age, was a massive plus. They're regarded as a company that trains their employees very well and don't put up with any BS. So if you've worked there from the age of 16 till 18 or whatever, you're considered pretty damn reliable. The cups of ranch, like the ones for nuggets, are different than the ranch that goes on wraps and sandwiches. I believe that kind is buttermilk. I think most McDonald's have discontinued the wraps though, sadly. Fun fact, I met the love of my life at a McDonald's. We were both teenagers and closed together 5 nights a week. He and I had the best work ethic because we both worked at McDonald's for a few years, so we knew the closing procedures like the back of our hands. Every time I ordered a wrap, he'd make sure to go grab a ranch cup and use that instead. Always told me it was made with extra love. Cute teenage crap like that. Before we knew it, we got an apartment together, months turned into years, we planned our lives together and almost eloped. I couldn't picture myself with any other person, and neither could he. Sadly, he passed away unexpectedly last year. I was heartbroken, obviously, but it forced me to take a good look at my life and change what I didn't like. Now, every time I think of McDonald's, I get flashbacks that take me back to that blissful time. Such good memories. Definitely wasn't the greatest job, but knowing how to do the procedures in a smart way and working with fun people, who also work smarter, not harder, really made it one of my favorite jobs. This isn't really a secret, more of a story. One time someone replaced the chocolate syrup in the shake machine with barbecue sauce on accident because the bottles are similar. I mean, they're labeled differently, but it still happens. We found out because a few people complained that the chocolate shakes were sour. We remade them for a couple of people and they moved on, but one lady just wouldn't let it go. My manager tasted the shake and was like, "What the frick?" and then looked and saw the culprit. We had to clean the line after that, so we didn't have chocolate shakes for a hot second. Fries are delicious when dipped in Big Mac sauce, or with the honey dip for the McNuggets. Get a cheaper burger dressed as a Mac to save money on buying a Big Mac. You can ask them to throw an apple pie into the McFlurry so you now have a pie McFlurry. The big breakfast usually is made with scrambled eggs. You can ask them to be sunny side up as well. If the fries are yellow or brown, the oil hasn't been changed in a long time. If they come out white or very pale yellow, they're made in fresh oil. One pie is the same cost as 2 pies. Always buy 2, because why the F not? You can ask for leaf lettuce instead of the shredded stuff. Sometimes it tastes better on certain sandwiches. The eggs are real. McDonald's is the biggest buyer of chicken and eggs in the world. Tim Hortons eggs are made of powder. Ugh. People would do just about anything to get their hands on the Beanie Baby Happy Meal toys in the late 90s. We had a rule that you had to buy a meal to get the Beanie Babies, so people would come in, order 6 meals, and then throw away the food and leave with the toys. What basic, kid-level fact blew your mind as an adult? I lived in a desert for most of my life. No snow, and before my recent experience, I'd spent maybe a total of 5 days of my life in snow, and the snow I was in was incredibly light. Because of this, I always pictured snow as eternally white and ethereal, like in all of the cartoons that I'd watched as a kid. I went to spend time with my partner's family back in the Midwest in early February. I was absolutely enchanted on my first day of the 2-week stint. And then I watched what happened as the snow stayed around, and I got to see black ice and the nasty grey-brown snow blocks on the side of the road. I suppose I should have known snow got dirty and tracked over and nasty, but I didn't. It robbed the childhood wonder and whimsy right from under my nose. I was baking a cake in my dorm for my 19th birthday. My friends were running around and being loud, so I yelled at them to stop because I didn't want them to ruin the cake. They looked at me like I had 2 heads, so I had to explain that my siblings and I were always taught that making loud noises or running around a kitchen when something was baking would make it fall. I was surprised that they'd never learned that baking rule. Yeah, it turns out that was made up to stop kids from running and being loud for a couple of hours when the baking was being done. I called my mum up to ask her about it, and both she and my grandma were just as shocked as I was to find out it was a myth. So apparently at least 3 generations have believed and followed that rule. My mother used to feed me dark green lettuce as a salad. I loved it when I was a kid. I think I was 17 and I had a friend over for dinner and asked my mum for seconds of dark green lettuce. My friend looked at me like I'm a frickin' idiot. Do you mean that's spinach? What the F? Mums had been fooling me my whole life. In college, my buddy asked me how to spell smorning because his phone didn't recognize it as a word. And then he goes on to say, like the smorning. I ask, do you mean this morning? One day, I had a light bulb moment. Pickling is a process. You can pickle anything. So what are pickles? I was going to blow so many minds with my question. Turns out it's cucumbers. And everyone on the planet knew that except me. One of the unanswered questions of the universe is why cucumbers are special. You've got pickled eggs, pickled herring, pickled pig's feet, but when you pickle cucumbers, you get pickles, not pickled cucumbers. Why? The answer might well be that pickled cucumbers are the only one of those things actually worth eating. Look, the others served their purpose in the pre-refrigerator days, but I'm going to risk the wrath of our English viewers and just say that pickled eggs have no redeeming qualities as a food. Why would you eat them when you have those amazing cold pork pie things in your pubs? I thought robins, like the birds, came out of hibernation at Christmas time because that's when you see them on cards and stuff in the UK. I didn't realize for a very long time that you in fact see them all the time, like normal birds. Not me, but my father once stole into the woods during a family camping trip and put marshmallows on a bush so it looked like they grew on it. My sister made it to post-secondary horticulture before she wised up. I always thought the term "the coast is clear" was "the ghost is clear," like as in transparent. My great-grandfather had half a pinky on his left hand and always said it was because he liked to use it to sop up leftover pancake syrup and had worn it down to a nub. This made sense to me because I'd seen him do that plenty of times. I was so embarrassed to be in college before I realized that was ridiculous and finally asked him what really happened. In reality, he and my uncle had been working in their blacksmith shop, and my uncle accidentally brought a sledgehammer down on Granddad's pinky. He just didn't want to traumatize me with the truth as a kid, but by the time I asked, I was more than old enough to handle it. As a kid, I used to think the black market was an actual place like a bazaar where all the criminals would regularly meet up. When I was 4 or 5, my mother had bought me a balloon one day. Plain blue balloon with helium. I accidentally let it go and it flew away. Being little, I was devastated. Later that night, she comes back from somewhere and tells me she was at the gas station and miraculously, my balloon just came floating by. Being a kid, I was thrilled and I totally believed it. So fast forward 20 plus years, I'm on a date and we stop to get gas and we see a balloon floating by the gas station. I probably hadn't thought of that story again in all that time. So I start telling my date the story of how I had a balloon fly away and then my mother found the very same balloon at a gas station, and then as I'm saying it out loud I realize, too late to not look like an idiot, that of course it wasn't the same frickin' balloon. I've never seen someone laugh so hard. I didn't realize the handicap sign was a person in a wheelchair for a long time. I'd always thought it was just a neat little symbol, kind of like a treble clef. I truly believed that for the longest time that hair grew from the ends of the strands, not from the scalp. When I was 13, I asked my friend who had dyed her hair what she was going to do when the ends grew her natural color. I did not hear the end of that. My stupidity still pains me to this day. I learned after the 2016 election that Alaska is not in fact an island with a weirdly straight border. That's just how it looks on the electoral map. For years, I'd been removing toast from the toaster by sticking a butter knife in it and picking it out. It wasn't until I was 20 that my girlfriend freaked out when I started doing it, and I learned that metal in the toaster is bad. I guess I'd been pretty lucky. I thought until about the age of 21 that when companies had "est" next to their name, it was estimated that companies were started around that year. It was only when I voiced my disgust profoundly to my then partner that it was ridiculous that nobody knew when these companies were formed, and why were they all estimated, that she just stared at me blankly for a moment and said, "Established." The penny dropped real hard just then. I was 23 when I learned I was allergic to apples. Somebody was complaining about their throat closing up after smoking, and I responded with, "Oh yeah, like when you eat an apple." You can imagine how the conversation went from there. A friend of mine learned he was allergic to bananas when his mum asked why he didn't want one, and he just said he wasn't in the mood for a spicy fruit. We were at least teenagers. That little thing that dangles at the back of your throat isn't your tonsils. Depends on what you consider a child fact, I suppose, but in my mid-20s I moved up the food chain from server to bartender at the restaurant I worked at. Someone ordered a Roman Coke. I didn't know what was in a Roman Coke, so I told him so, but that I'd figure it out. I figured out that what I'd been understanding as a Roman Coke my whole drinking life was in fact a rum and Coke, and that I knew how to make that. I didn't learn that Martin Luther and Martin Luther King Jr. weren't the same person until college. I'm from Pennsylvania. When they do the nightly lottery drawings on TV, they always add a reminder at the end. Benefits older Pennsylvanians every day. So naturally, I just assumed that a lot of elderly people won the lottery. When I was a teen, I made a joke to my dad about him turning 50 and having a better shot at winning the lottery, and he looked at me like I was nuts. Turns out that benefits older Pennsylvanians every day means the lottery is a fundraiser for senior services, and here I was thinking that it meant Grandma was winning millions on her scratch-offs. I'm like 70% sure that there are a lot of people who might have drawn the same conclusion as you about their state or country lotteries. And I've just honestly never thought about it, but I think given that more old people play those things, as far as I know, it's one of those ideas that I might have also come around to if I was left to my own devices. My mum used to tell me the car doesn't start if the seatbelts aren't buckled. Didn't know that wasn't a real feature until I was 22. My 31-year-old girlfriend thought islands don't touch the bottom of the ocean. I can confirm this is a thing. I was a kayak, surf, and snorkel guide in Hawaii, and a staggering amount of people asked me how long it would take to swim under the island. Don't add dish soap to the dishwasher. I found out that one at 26. I swear it's only because I grew up washing dishes by hand. I had a fun time cleaning that mistake. Space heaters are so named because they heat a room, a space, and not because they look like futuristic devices from outer space. I went to Lowe's and I asked in front of everyone for a strap, hold for demonetization, on. The correct word I was looking for was ratchets and tie-downs. It took me an embarrassingly long time before I realized that when a movie had a blurb from Rolling Stone, it wasn't the Rolling Stones reviewing it. I spent well into my teen years thinking it's cool how the Rolling Stones are so influential in music that they have a whole magazine reviewing stuff. Like, I really thought Mick Jagger was just giving his opinion on stuff. My cousin's name. Growing up, we'd always called her Tori. Always that and nothing else. A couple of years ago, well into my 20s, she's visiting and we go to a restaurant. Our waitress comes up and says, "Hi there, my name's Victoria and I'll be taking care of you." And my cousin says, "Oh, neat, that's my name too." And I was surprised by that because my dumb self never put together that Tori was short for Victoria. I thought the former leader of North Korea was Kim Jong-II for an embarrassingly long time. I somehow managed to avoid hearing his name said out loud, or written in serif font, apparently. They're doing much better now that they're led by Kim Jong from the UN. My mother told me that if you swallowed gum, it would stick to your ribs. I was in my second year of college in an anatomy class when it hit me that this wasn't true. My roommate was 21 when he learned that cows have hair. He thought they were just skin, or that we just, peeled the leather straight off them. I incorrectly said the bryst of it instead of the gist of it. I used that phrase in conversation for years, until when I was nearly 30 I got corrected by a Jehovah's Witness that came to my door and asked me if I ever read the Bible. I smugly replied I got the bryst of it. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. That reindeer are a real animal. When I found out about Father Christmas, I thought that meant reindeer weren't real either. I was very much an adult when I was very confused and excited to see one in real life. In college, I had a tough time trying to convince a friend that yellow dandelion flowers were the same as the white puffballs. I had to find a plant that had both stages coming from the same base. That woodchucks and groundhogs are the same animal. I was somewhere in my 30s. My state called them woodchucks, so I never made the connection when I was younger. I thought an axolotl was a fantasy creature that didn't exist. I mean, you can't blame me, just look up a picture of one and tell me that doesn't look straight out of some fantasy movie. I was only able to see the capital D in the Disney logo a few months ago. I always wondered why it was a backwards G. I'm 29 years old, it wasn't my brightest moment. I always thought the Y was a P, like Disnep. I thought it was some fancy French spelling. I was in my mid-20s when I casually mentioned it to my brother and he nearly choked laughing. At age 22, I learnt that kiwis aren't supposed to taste spicy. Turns out I'm just allergic. I thought for the longest time that's why people liked them. When I was young, I found a Doobie Brothers CD at a relative's. I asked my mum what a doobie is, and she said it's a lady's private part and to never say it. I was 17 before I saw someone call a sweet roll of Mary J a doobie. I found out that jackalopes are not real and a creation from taxidermists and other folklore. I was absolutely mind-blown and Scooby-Doo betrayed my younger mind. There's no chemical in the pool that reveals pee. A buddy and I were talking about it and we both realized at the same time that neither of us have actually seen it. We looked it up and felt as dumb as hell. The Adam Sandler movie Grown Ups, or maybe its sequel, uses this premise as a gag. I like to think that will help keep this myth alive for another generation. I was a lifeguard for many years and we absolutely told the kids that pee-revealing chemical is real. My granddad played this epic decades-long practical joke on me. Every Christmas, for as long as I remember, he'd put on Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, only the first disc, and said it was a Christmas tradition. Every year, without fail, he'd put the CD on regardless of if we were at his house or if he came to us that year. It was only at Christmas 2020, when I had my first Christmas without seeing any family due to COVID, that I asked my housemate, "Do you want me to stick on the War of the Worlds now or later?" My housemate looked at me perplexed. "What?" "You know, War of the Worlds. My granddad insisted it was a tradition." Only your granddad does that." I told him over video call on Boxing Day, and I have never seen the old man laugh so hard. I mean, it is funny, but I've got to say that it sounds like he actually did turn it into a real tradition in the family. This happened every year on Christmas for, 2 decades? My family have been doing Love Actually for that long, and I'm pretty sure that it counts as a tradition if there have been new generations born into it. Okay, so I grew up on a small farm. We had cows, chickens, pigs, rabbits, and goats, and more. On occasion, we had to shear the goats, and the goats would hold very still when being sheared, like statue still. I saw this on pretty regular occasions. When my parents would take me to get a haircut, they'd tell the barber to give me a billy goat cut. Of course, to me, this meant hold really still, so I did. I had the same barber for a long time. Eventually, he passed when I was in high school, leaving it up to me to find a new barber. Imagine mine and my new barber's surprise when he said, "How do you want it cut?" And I just said I want a normal billy goat cut. This is one of those things that makes me cringe at night. A friend of mine had a mum that would make sure there was an inch of room for his feet to grow whenever he got new shoes as a kid. He was in his 20s and trying on new shoes and asked the salesperson if there was room at the tip. They looked at him like he had a Johnson growing out of his forehead and said, "You don't need room. You're done growing." Oof. I'm from a northern city in the US. In basic training for the army, I was asked by the chow hall lady if I wanted grits with my eggs and bacon at breakfast. I'd literally never seen or heard of them in my life. I lived a relatively sheltered and somewhat ethnic-focused dietary life. I asked her what grits were, and she replied, "Well, they're just grits." So asked, as politely as I could, "Are they an animal, mineral, or vegetable?" Luckily, my new friend from Florida was behind me, heard the entire conversation and said to me, "They're corn, somewhere between cream corn and cornmeal." He then said, "If you put butter and salt on them, they taste like butter and salt." I loved that guy. He's probably a general now. My grandma always made me eat the crust on my bread because it has the most nutrients. In college, when I told my younger cousin that in front of my grandma, she laughed and said, "Oh, I only told you that so you wouldn't waste the crust." Similarly, that if you turn the lights on and off too fast, you'll start a fire. Once I became a parent, I realized it's just a way of stopping kids from being annoying. Once when I was 17, I was losing my mind trying to find cupcake mix in the baking aisle, only to then have the epiphany that cupcakes are just, small cakes. That a pony is not a baby horse. I'm 47 and I learned that less than a decade ago. I had to tell my aunt, who's age 60, that cats and dogs can't interbreed and create some sort of hybrid cat dog. She didn't believe me at first, so I had to tell her that there would be a lot of half people, half sheep running around in our country if that were the case. One of my mates from my master's at grad school didn't know that there were male and female chickens. He thought roosters and hens were different breeds. The same went for cows. He justifies hating cheese because he thought cow milk was cow urine. We had to explain to him that pee is not stored in the udders and also asked him what he thought happened when human mothers fed their newborns. Pee is not stored in the chest, mate. We were 24 at the time. Tim, if you're reading this, you were way smarter than me at neuro-ophthalmology. I had my CPA license before I realized pickles are actually cucumbers. Why there are no number 10 birthday candles in stores. I was complaining about it with my husband and he said, "You're supposed to put a 1 and a 0 together." And that was the lowest point in my entire life. Coral is an animal. I always thought it was just an undersea plant, or the son of Rick Grimes. Okay, here goes. I'm almost a senior citizen, but a couple of weeks ago I learned that they actually laid cable across the Atlantic for telegraph. I was in tears when my hubby told me because I thought he was joking with me when he said they laid cable for telegraph. I said, "No, they didn't. That's impossible." But he was not joking and cable was put between the continents. Then I got very upset because I was never taught that in school. My grandpa used to take me fishing a lot as a child. He explained that any noise at all would scare the fish in the lake and ruin fishing for everyone there for hours. On a boat with my husband last month at the age of 28. My husband turned on the radio while we were fishing. When I complained, he said, "Oh honey, Grandpa just wanted you to shut up." I realized Grandpa just wanted some peace and quiet. The song I Saw Mummy Kissing Santa Claus is not about creepy infidelity, but rather hinges on the fact that dads sometimes dress up as Santa, which I realized in my 20s when I brought it up with my Catholic roommate. I'm Jewish, so there's no pretense as to who gives you a pair of socks on the 8th night of Hanukkah. The little pig going wee 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 all the way home was squealing and not peeing. I was in my 20s before I heard someone say it while squealing with their wee, and I did a shocked Pikachu face. I had a friend who at 25 found out that pepperoni was indeed not a vegetable. He ordered a meat lover's supreme. The waitress was both surprised and amused when responding to his concerns about why pepperoni was on his meat-only pizza. I'm trying to imagine both A, what the hell his tongue tells his brain pepperoni tastes like, and B, what the heck he thought a pepperoni looked like in its natural state. Howdy is short for how do you do. Well, color the narrator educated. However, I don't feel especially stupid about this one. It's definitely been sanded down a lot over the centuries. I wonder if someone made a conscious choice or if it was just faster and less pronounced repetitions of how do you do. I guess you do hear some people say howdy doody sometimes, don't you? Interesting. That no, a scientist doesn't actually know everything about every subject in school. I used to think that they were the masters of the world, knowing everything mankind ever learned. I also thought you needed to be a scientist to be president, but oh well. The world would probably be better if that was true. My mum used to tell me that putting too much vinegar on your chips makes your blood dry up, so I've been scared of putting too much on. I'm 25 now and I've just realized that my mum wanted me to save everything due to her being a single mum and in a lot of debt. That Apollo 13 was an actual event and not just a movie starring Tom Hanks. Would have been embarrassing in any context, but all the more so when I was working with Captain James Lovell and asked him why he was signing new paperbacks of Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks on the cover. "Oh, did you work on that movie?" I asked. It was beyond awkward. We had an hour's drive together, and so after he patiently explained that he was on the mission, and as I had not seen the movie, I asked if he would tell me the story. He laughed and agreed. Okay, I've never met anyone who didn't think they already knew the story. Hearing him tell it to me was riveting and special. 25 years later, I still cringe, but it was one of the best days in my life. He's truly an amazing human. What are your Craigslist seller horror stories? I wanted a hamster. I found a post for free hamsters on Craigslist. I called the phone number and asked, "Do you still have any hamsters left?" And the lady replied, "Oh yeah, I just found some." Did I hear that right? I must have misheard that. I arrived at her house and there were several cages filled with hamsters. She wasn't an intentional animal hoarder. She started out with 2 or 3, but one of the hamsters escaped and it was pregnant. They started breeding in her walls like rodents, and every time she'd find one, she'd put it in a cage. When I arrived at her place, there were about 100 hamsters in the walls and under the couch. Her house was infested with hamsters. She was genuinely overwhelmed and had no idea how to take care of the problem. I gave her the phone number for a small animal rescue. They removed all the hamsters. I adopted 2 of them, Peanut and Teeny Bean. Teeny Bean had a massive facial tumor, 1 black eye and 1 white eye. He was born without one and his eyeball socket filled with some kind of gel. The vet said these were cosmetic and he was otherwise fine. He was the ugliest hamster ever and he loved to snuggle. In short, I went to adopt a hamster, and the reason she was giving them away was that her house had a massive hamster infestation. I went to buy a Nintendo 64 with a ton of games and a few controllers for $100. He told me to meet him at a Walmart not far from my school, so I went after the school day. He told me that morning that he had a cherry red Mustang and to meet him at it at 3 o'clock. I pulled into the Walmart and there were about 3 or 4 cop cars around a cherry red Mustang. The guy was sitting on the curb while they took a bunch of crap out of his car. He had like 2 pounds of Mary J on him and some other stuff. I was sad. I really wanted that Nintendo. You should have gone up to the cops and said, "Hey, I think that's the guy who stole my Nintendo. Did you find one in the car? Free Nintendo." I foolishly let a strange guy come into my house to buy a used iPad that I'd advertised on Craigslist for his son. He handed me $40 less in cash than I asked for on my ad, saying it was all the cash he had, and that he figured it was a fair price. When I refused to accept what he offered, he became irate, red in the face, slapped my table with his palm, and said I was being greedy and that everyone selling on Craigslist negotiates their asking price these days. I tried to calm him down by saying that I only had the add-in for one day and I'd be glad to call him if he couldn't sell it for my asking price. He angrily decided he still wanted it and left to go to his bank to get the $40, slamming my door behind him so hard that the house shook. As soon as he left, I texted him not to come back because I'd changed my mind about selling the iPad after all. He texted me back apologizing, but I never responded. I felt really relieved when I got him out of my house and also really stupid for allowing him to come in. I mean, most of these stories are about 10 years or older now, but the narrator can confirm that you can still get stories very much like this if you just go on Facebook Marketplace. I swear, half the deals I've had there have been absolutely cartoonish disasters. This video is not sponsored by Facebook Marketplace. My girlfriend and I arranged to buy a couch off a couple in a fairly bad neighborhood. After the hassle of trying to find the place, we get in the apartment, and the couch is in really good condition, and it was retail listed for $1,200, and we were paying $500. They were moving the next day and really needed to sell it. As I was carrying one of the sections of the couch out with the guy, I see a bug scuttle across the couch. The guy flicks it off with a certain quickness, and he looks at me with the most apprehensive stare ever. Long story short, the couch was absolutely infested with roaches, like I'm talking thousands inside the couch. And they knew. Since this seems to be a common question, no, I did not keep the couch. I had them cut open the bottom of it and roaches just poured out like a horror movie. I got my money back right there and then and left the couch outside where it belonged. They didn't put up much of a fight about giving me my money back. I love ferrets, and I was in the market for a pair. I owned one when I was younger. I always check Kijiji for people who bought a new pet and ended up over their head. Because I'm worried about these first and foremost. I know that shelter animals are still being fed. I saw the perfect post. Free to a good home. Got daughter ferrets, doesn't like them because they bite. I figured they'd still be trainable, and the pickup was in a nice part of town. I go to the house and it's a nice big house. So far, so good. The lady invites me in and says the ferrets are downstairs. I get inside and it's just wall-to-wall toys. Her 10-year-old daughter comes around the corner, and it's unbelievable how similar her daughter looks to Veruca Salt in the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie. It doesn't surprise me how much she acts like the kid in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory at all. She starts screaming and hitting her mum for trying to get rid of the ferrets. The mum doesn't even notice her daughter punching her. And then I notice all the animals in the house. There's like 1 billion hamster cages I see from the walk to the front door to the basement. They're all stuffed with bunnies and guinea pigs and hedgehogs and gerbils and hamsters and daggers and chinchillas. It's obvious that this spoilt brat got a pet every time she went to a pet store, and the moron parents just assumed they'd all go in hamster cages and eat pellets. I get to the basement and there's 4 budgies just flying loose, and there's a dog kennel too. The lady said the ferrets were in the dog kennel. There were 5 ferrets there. Apparently they'd bought her the whole litter before figuring out that they were so bitey. She was trying to give me 5 ferrets in a crap-covered dog kennel. None of them were vaccinated for rabies or distemperment. I declined and left the house through the reptile room, full of poor animals without heat lamps, and I immediately called animal services. I can't believe people like that exist. This happened to my friend. He was selling a graphing calculator and arranged to meet the buyer at a shopping center. The buyer wanted to test it out, but it didn't have batteries. My friend agreed to ride to a grocery store with him to pick up the batteries. On the way back to where they originally met, the buyer took the calculator to test it out. He plays with it for a minute, agrees it's in good condition, and passes it back to my friend. On the screen, the buyer had typed, "You are kidnapped." My friend finishes reading this, the buyer locks the doors and speeds up. My friend panics. Then the buyer stops, laughs, gives my friend his money, lets him out and tells him to be more careful. It was almost a Raymond K. Hessel kind of thing, I guess. I went to buy a semi-rare video game, Final Fantasy Tactics, before it became a greatest hit. I met this girl in a Wendy's parking lot, she gave me the CD case, I opened it, and it was empty. I demanded my $20 back, she looked at me and said if I did anything other than leave, she'd lie and say that I attacked her. I pulled out my phone and started to pretend to record her. My cell phone at the time had no camera. She started stumbling around pretending that I'd hit her. After a minute of this silliness, our eyes met and I think she realized how ridiculous this was getting and gave me my money back. These people sicken me. Using the law to extort $20 from you? Frickin' ridiculous. And then the real victims of what she was going to pretend happened get discredited. I went to buy a bunch of rock band gear and the lady tells me that her husband will meet me in a large parking lot. He'll be in a black and white SUV. So I show up and the only car is a highway patrol Suburban. I casually pull up a space away and get out, wondering when the seller is going to show up, and wondering if I'd unknowingly done something illegal. Turns out even highway patrol gets bored of their rock band gear. It went as planned, but I did get nervous. 2 of my roommates went to purchase a couch from someone living on the 3rd floor of an apartment building. They paid for the couch, but somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd floor got it stuck so badly in the stairwell that they decided to cut their losses and just leave it there. That person makes a living selling that couch over and over. Nobody can get it down the stairwell. I was selling a small spray skirt for kayaking. Basically, it's a tight rain jacket that bungees around the kayak to keep the water out. I specifically advertised it as small. Anyway, meet up with a guy, he gets out of his truck, and he isn't huge, but he certainly should be looking for an L or XL instead of a men's small. He insists that he can fit into it. Spray skirts don't have zippers or anything, you just pull them over and they can get quite claustrophobic. This guy tries to pull his on, gets like halfway in, realizes he's stuck and he starts to panic. I have to help him take it off. I forgot to mention that this all happened in a busy mall parking lot as well. The guy tries to pull it on, gets like halfway in, realizes he's stuck, and he starts to panic. I have to help him take it off. I forget to mention this all happened in a busy mall parking lot as well. The guy wasn't really angry, but he said he was frustrated that I wasted his time. I mean, I was going to ask if you'd actually put the size on your page, but even if you hadn't, that's a good thing to ask when you're inquiring. And if he wasn't deterred by you just showing the size of it in person and expressing your doubt, it's unlikely he was going to put off by anything as trivial as listed sizes anyway. I was selling a 1996 Dodge Avenger. I hadn't driven it much the past year, and it had been sitting for about 4 months, so I got rid of it before it was a total loss. I put 2 new tires on, front brakes and alignment, a year earlier, so it had a few hundred miles on the tires. I took it for inspection, and the guy informed me that the radiator crossmember, the rear driver's shock mount, and the driver's rocker were just rusted out. It passed, but it would need work. I advertised it for $800. One guy stopped by. He lived nearby. He gave me a story about not having much money and needed a car to get to work. He and his friend took it for a 2-hour test drive. They left the friend's very expensive truck, so I wasn't worried that they weren't coming back. I'd already explained everything I knew to be wrong with the car, and the buyer started pointing out known problems and offered me $250. I haggled him up to $380 as a price. We were to meet in a few days for the transfer. I met him at a trailer sales office nearby, even though I offered to go to AAA because it would be cheaper. He said, I took the car to a mechanic and he said, the problems that I'd already outlined to him, how about I give you $300 instead? I said no, he was already getting it for less than half my asking price, and it was worth that much in scrap anyway. We did the transfer. He had us say it was a gift in exchange for some work so he wouldn't have to pay sales tax, and that it had cost him $200, even though AAA would have charged $75. 3 weeks later, the guy calls me. He claimed that the head gasket was bad and the car had broken down. He wanted to know what I was going to do about that. I said, look, you bought a car off the side of the road for almost nothing. I can't offer anything. If I'd known it had a bad gasket, I would have scrapped it. And then it later occurred to me that if the head gasket had been bad, the mechanic should have found it when he looked over it originally. The buyer hung up, then for the next 3 days he called me 5 times a day. I didn't answer and he didn't leave messages. A week later, I saw the car in a local shopping center lot. It had a dent, so I knew it was mine. The guy was just trying to scam me. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. It was a few weeks before my junior year of college, so this was 2010. I wanted to sell an old couch from my previous house because we were getting 2 new roommates and they already had couches. I posted the ad and 15 minutes later I got an email. The guy said he'd pay $75 for the couch. I'd listed it at $100, but he'd bring some Xbox games to trade to make up the difference. Okay, nice. So he pulls up in a truck with 2 women in the bed. I insist on helping him get the couch outside, but he says no and he has the 2 women do it. And then things get really interesting. He says he only has $50, but if I took the money, he would give me one of the girls for 20 minutes. Keep in mind, he told me this as the couch was sitting in his truck. I didn't know what to say. I took the $50 and said to just leave. He was insulted for some reason and threatened to come back and beat my punk face and rob me blind. We moved to our new house the next day with our new roommates. Fast forward a month, I was reading my school's newspaper, and on the front page was a picture of my old street with the headline, Man arrested intimidating students at a party with a crowbar. My old residence. And I read on. His name was Bruce, and his criminal background included 17 misdemeanors and a dropped unspeakable act and attempted kidnapping charge. Also, just as icing on the cake, he was also wanted in Ohio for numerous stalking charges. Oh, Craigslist. Never again. I bought an Xbox 360 from a Craigslist ad. The kid selling was like 17. We met at a public location, a Starbucks, at my request. I handed him the money, and he handed me the 360. Then he asked me if he could buy me a coffee. I declined. He asked me if I wanted to go out sometime, and I declined and thanked him for the Xbox and left. Well, unfortunately, he had my phone number and email address as I'd responded to his ad. He started sending me these long, angst-filled teenage emails about how he was in love with me and I was his destiny, and texting me dozens of times a day. I used to grow vegetables indoors in my apartment in college, hydroponically. I did not, although no one believes me, grow Mary J. Anyways, I graduated and got a house with plenty of land so I could finally grow outdoors, and I sell my old HPS lamps on Craigslist. The guy who picks it up is your typical 18-year-old wannabe gangster green herb head. And about 4 months later, I see him on the news having been arrested for operating a grow house, less than a quarter mile from a police station and a school. Not Craigslist, but Kijiji, which is the same idea but a different site. A couple of years ago, I was buying some DVDs from a guy. I'd drunk too much the night before and I was having a hellish hangover, but I decided to get the DVDs anyway. He was on the sketchy side of town. Anyway, I pulled up to his house. It's a 5-plex, 5 attached houses, and there's a note on the front door to go to the back. So I go to the back and there are these 3 gangster-looking guys, midday drunk, and some smacked-out girl with her shirt tied up, barely covering her, and in short shorts. They all stop what they're doing and stare at me. Are you selling the DVDs? I ask, sweating beneath my dorky Spider-Man t-shirt. DVDs? Nah, man, don't have any of those. You want some smack? Says the largest one, flexing his muscles. No thanks. What about my girl here? What do you mean? My face is dripping with sweat at this point. You want to take her home? No thanks. I saw this ad on Kijiji. Why not? You think she's ugly? He stands up and looks at me menacingly while I stammer and then says, nah, I'm just messing with you, man. No DVDs. You sure you don't want some smack? No. Okay, I've got to go. See ya. And I turned around and got the heck out of there. Okay, that's the second post with someone just offering somebody else's bedroom favors up. That makes me think there's definitely some sort of common scam to extort or rob these people in the act. Don't accept these sort of offers, kids. Oh yeah. I needed Microsoft Office and I noticed that people sold the program for cheap on Craigslist. One guy 20 minutes away was selling the program for $20. Told me to meet at his house late at night when he got home from work. It ended up being in a sketch dead-end street and he told me to come to his garage where he and a couple of his buddies were smoking inside. This was my first, this is kinda weird, moment. After I took my laptop out and started putting it on the table, one of his buddies tried to close the garage door on me. I realized what was happening, so I tried to grab the laptop and hit the sensors to leave. The guy tried to grab the laptop same time, and I ended up being in quite a tug of war with him. I let go and hit the sensors and decided to just leave and call the cops. They hid the laptop, but I was able to use the Find My iPhone app, which finds laptops too, and got it back. I don't know how the guy thought he'd get away with it. I was looking to buy a motorcycle a while back. I found the one I wanted on a post on Craigslist late one night after work at about 9 p.m. I emailed the seller and he was still online, and he said I could still go and see it if I came soon. So I went and saw the guy to take a test ride. As any responsible seller would do, he asked for cash in hand before he gave me the keys, and he asked to see my license to make sure I had an M endorsement. Otherwise, I wasn't getting the thing. So everything was good. I told him I'd be back the next day and we could hammer out all the details, the title, the bill of sale and stuff. Well, the next day, the guy says he can't meet, he's getting called into work. I'm sad, but no big deal. If he's still interested in selling, I can wait a day. The next morning at about 9 a.m., he calls and says, Oh, hey man, I'm going to be in the area today. Would you just want me to bring the bike by? And I'm stoked. That means I don't have to call my insurance before I can ride it home legally. We continued talking and I said, Hey, don't you need my address? After thinking about it for a moment, he said, Nah, I remember it from when you showed me your license. Well, that's a little odd. So he shows up at my house with the bike at about 10 a.m., 2 days after I'd gone to look at it. The guy is being real nice and we're chatting about motorcycles, and then he says he forgot the title at his house. He'll go back for it. His wife followed him in his truck. He'll get it and then we'll do a bill of sale. I figured that would be fine. I offered to go ahead and give him the money. Bad idea, I know, I was 19. And he says, "Well man, why don't you give me half of it? That's $2,000, and I'll get the rest when I get back with the title." It seems pretty fair, so I let him go. So I go wait patiently inside as the guy goes to retrieve the title. He isn't back within the hour as he said he'd be. He probably got sidetracked. I wait another hour, and I'm getting nervous. So I call him. No answer. I wait another hour, and I'm getting really creeped out. The guy just left his motorcycle here. Why? And then things get really weird. 2 police officers show up at the house I'm renting. They bang on my door. I answer, dumbfounded. "Is that your motorcycle in the driveway, sir?" they ask, and I start to explain the situation. After telling them that the guy will be back soon with the title, they say, "Well, sir, this bike was reported stolen 2 days ago. The person who reported it stolen said he drove by here and saw it and he called us right away. Did you steal this motorcycle?" And I'm freaking out. No, I didn't steal it. I tell them again what the situation is. I give them the guy's phone number. He doesn't answer them either. They call another officer to my house. As they're waiting on backup and getting my information, they say, "We have recorded video from the owner of someone getting on this bike and riding away late Sunday evening. Do you know anything about that?" I say I don't and then say, "Well, I went and I test rode this Sunday night, but the owner was there. I can give you his address." And they seem interested. I give them the address. They talk amongst themselves for a moment as I'm sitting on my front stairs. They come back to me and say, "Sir, the address you gave us belongs to the original owner of the motorcycle who reported it stolen." And it begins to make sense. I'm being framed for a theft. I ask if I can see the video of the bike being stolen, and they say that I can if I come down to the station with them. So I go. No handcuffs, but I am in the back of a police cruiser. I ask the cop who's driving if he can get the guy who reported it stolen to come down too. They say that the guy just isn't answering his phone. I ask if it was the phone number I gave them, and they say no. The guy must have had a burner phone or something. So I get to the precinct, I get taken to this cop's desk. He asks me a few questions and then asks me to watch the video. It's on a CD. He pulls it up, and sure enough, it's me getting on the guy's bike. But the guy isn't in the frame. It was then that it really became clear to me how detailed this whole facade was. The guy had the bike around the back of the house, but we spoke around the front, and I parked my car around front. The bike had the keys in it already. When I bought the bike back, I left it around the front of the house per the guy's request. Because of this, the video showed me getting on the bike at 10 p.m. with the keys in the ignition, pulling it out and seemingly never bringing it back. He even managed to stay out of frame, and aside from a couple of glances in his direction, I don't seem to be interacting with anyone off camera. I'm really screwed here. So my answer is already really long, but I'll sum it up. After spending the entire day at the local police station, the guy shows up and starts asking if I'm the guy who stole his bike. The situation got worse for me until the police managed to make the guy slip up. He just couldn't keep his story straight. He breaks down and admits that he made it all up. He needed the money to pay some bills, but he couldn't bear to sell his bike. So he set up a plan to make an insurance claim for someone stealing his motorcycle, and then created a plan to keep the bike, get some money from a buyer who'd be framed as a thief, and all would end well for him. Except it didn't. I think he ended up going to prison. I'm not sure. I got my money back and I put the whole ordeal behind me. So that's my creepy Craigslist story. What should people seriously stop buying for everyone's sake? Online IQ tests. If there was a way to fail an IQ test, paying for one online would be it. Animals, if you can't take care of that animal for the rest of their lives. And if you realize that you made a mistake, rehome them. Do not set them free. Most of them will wreak havoc on the native ecosystem. Just look at the Everglades. Herbalife. Does anyone else notice that those Herbalife smoothie places keep popping up all over, but they're so shady about it? They look like the average mom-and-pop smoothie place with no Herbalife branding on the outside or anywhere inside, but then they start making your smoothie and bam, they pull out the Herbalife powder. Cheap children's party favors. We're not talking the colorful pencils and paper pads that actually have some use. I'm talking about the nondescript plastic forms with popular media stickers and other garbage. The amount of trash plastic available for this niche is staggering, especially given that most of those toys hold a child's attention for 2 hours maximum. Also, Happy Meal toys. Great for a collector because most of them get thrown out 6 months after being found behind the couch. Legos are highly resealable and giftable and tradable. Hot Wheels last forever. Most toys have at least a possible second life, but party favors are crap. It's just crap. These party stores are really depressing too. It's just a building full of garbage made to be used for a few hours, and the kids themselves aren't even paying attention to it when they have it. They'd have more fun with a puddle and some sticks. You should stop buying saltwater fish if you aren't willing to put in the effort. And there are species that just can't be kept in captivity even with the effort. 90% of saltwater fish that you see in stores, except for most clowns, some tangs and some seahorses, and I think maybe cardinal fish as well, are all wild caught. More than any other pet, when you take home a saltwater fish, you've purchased a piece of the environment, and you should treat it with every bit of respect that it deserves. Glitter. Sparkles, glitter, and sequins on everything, especially kids' items. You think it's hard to get that crap out of your house after craft time? It's microplastic, and it's going into our waterways and oceans. Yet the toy stores and clothing stores are adding more sequins and glitter every day. It makes me furious. Just stop buying it. Tasty, tasty microplastic. It's fine, we're already full to the gills with it. What harm could a little more do? Clearly I'm being sarcastic here, folks. Don't buy this crap. Merchandise with the pink "For the Cure" bows. The company made big bucks by selling cancer-causing products and then covering it up, then turning around and keeping a lot of the bucks they collect as donations. I guess it would be more accurate to say that they knowingly promote instead of sell carcinogenic products and activities, such as fracking, which causes a rise in cancers that typically have environmental causes, such as chest cancer, and it suppresses new information about cancer-promoting chemicals like BPA. Detox teas or anything that claims to help rid you of toxins in your body. If you can't do that crap on your own already, then you need a kidney or liver transplant, not a tea that a fit mom is trying to sell you. Anything involved in a multi-level marketing or MLM scan. I'm looking at you, young living essential oils. Fun fact about MLMs. When they ask you to sign up 10 people to move up to the next level, there's something they're not telling you. If everyone has to sign up 10 people, in 10 cycles, you'd run out of people on planet Earth. The reason you hear about so many of them and know so few people in them is because most people are too smart to fall for them. Any kind of shower gel or face wash that has those plastic microbeads in them. The beads are small enough to get through most filtration systems and are ruinous to marine life. I thought those were banned a while ago. Oh my god. I mean, there's so many potential products, but just stop buying so much. You don't need all that frickin' crap. Stop it. Other people. This isn't a super salacious or flashy response, but nobody should be buying a boiler, furnace, or water heater below 90% efficiency. The 80% efficiency equipment is ancient technology and you're throwing your money away while also spewing more greenhouse gases. Tiny plastic garbage. I see TikToks of people unboxing like these tiny mini plastic toys of name brand items, and they'll have hundreds of them all individually wrapped in multiple layers of packaging just to have tiny replicas of a little bottle of Windex or Lay's potato chips for some reason. Shark fin soup. The fishers only want the fin and they throw the fish out to the sea after cutting it off since the other body parts have no monetary value, leaving the shark to die. How does the rest of the meat not have any demand? I believe shark meat in general is very high in mercury, meaning eating a lot of it is very bad for you. The real reason though is that the fins are just worth so much that taking up room with the actual whole shark just isn't cost effective. I cannot understand the people that buy holiday decor every single year. Are people buying fake trees and tossing them every year and needing a new one? Same thing with ornaments and whatnot. Obviously people move out of their parents or they need replacement ornaments if they've broken something, but the amount in stores just doesn't add up to me. Why so much new stuff every year? Our city has a spot to dump your real Christmas trees to be ground into mulch. Every year there are multiple trees on the pile, still fully decorated with lights, ornaments, and the whole thing. It always blows our minds how stupid people can be. Fast fashion. Cigarettes. Quit while you can, internet friends. Animals that are so inbred to meet a certain breed standard that they're a walking vet bill from birth. I'm a vet tech and I'm so sick of seeing inhumane traits bred into a lot of dogs. Brachycephalic dog breeds such as French bulldogs being an example. On top of that, golden retrievers have become cancer machines. Some of the worst skin and food allergy dogs that we treat are purebred poodles, and other purebred dog owners spend a couple of grand on them. Right now there's a 4-month-old doggo Argentino flown in from like Puerto Rico. Cost them at least 5 grand for that dog. He's bilateral cryptochid, and they keep asking what we can do for him so he can stud. and we keep explaining that even if he ends up not being sterile, cryptorchidism is genetic and not something anyone should be breeding. The owner found a reproductive specialist that's supposedly a veterinarian who's willing to do a procedure to attempt testicular descent. I just can't even fathom any vet in their right mind being willing to do this. It should be classified as animal abuse. It's a serious welfare issue that needs to be addressed. K-cups. If you have a Keurig, use the reusable cup. The sewage that comes out of TV evangelists' mouths. As a Brit visiting the US and seeing med adverts with endless warnings about side effects, followed by evangelist messages without any warnings, was crazy. Nestlé products. That's easier said than done when they own more than 200 brands. Yeah, they're kind of aware that half the planet knows that they're pure evil now, and they're good at squirreling their brand name into some tiny inconspicuous part of the packaging. That's kind of part of the problem. Microtransactions, especially in sports games. Cosmetics in a free-to-play game? I don't have a problem with that. You gotta make money somehow, and it doesn't affect gameplay. Blatant gambling and pay-to-win functionality in games like NBA 2K and Madden? Those can F right off. Oh, you think adult games are bad? Sweet Mother Judas are toddler and under 10 games worse. My wife downloaded a Hot Wheels game for my son for his Amazon Fire tablet. It's riddled with microtransactions and in-game ads that you can't skip, trying to get kids to download the next game. It's not just toxic, it's freaking predatory. There need to be laws banning microtransactions in all formats of digital entertainment. I wouldn't have known about it either if he'd never handed it to me to help him build a tough puzzle track. They bury it so that you don't see it when you get the game from them. It's disgusting. A new phone every year. Who can afford to do this? New phones are like $1,100. My one's 7 years old. Any home exercise machine or equipment that requires a subscription to use. You paid $2,000 for a treadmill and then a recurring monthly fee to use it? How are people paying for this business model? Cricut just tried to pull this stunt. To use their required software to run the machine, they were going to start requiring a subscription fee even if you were using your own personal vectors that you designed. There was a huge blowback and they ended up rescinding it. For now, at least. Red Delicious apples. You deserve better than that mushy garbage. Get yourself a Honeycrisp. For a while, I genuinely just thought I kept getting bad Red Delicious apples. Turns out, they're all just awful. Please, uninstall Yelp from your phone. They're nothing more than extortionists that hold small businesses hostage to bad reviews. Real or fake, it doesn't matter. I can't express how crappy Yelp is as a company. Every time you open their app, you give them support. In short, F Yelp. Their salespeople are the worst. I added my tiny business on there, more so I could have another Google result rather than using it as a referral source in itself, and the next day I got a voicemail from their team who made it sound like there was something wrong with my business listing. I returned the call to see what needed to be fixed. He was then extremely pushy to have me pay to be one of the ads that you see at the top of Yelp searches. I said kindly, I'm starting small and focusing on a different area of advertising. He wouldn't let me get off the phone and had a really aggressive tone as the call went on. He told me my business would fail if nobody could find me on Yelp, and to have that happen, I needed the premium features. I had to hang up on him. It was so toxic and really got under my skin. And then I got all of these follow-up calls saying, there seems to be a disconnect between us. I'm really trying to help your business grow. Oh yeah? Then why do you have to harass people to help them? You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Caskets, especially those sealed tight ones. Our dead need to decompose, and they will, but the casket can just explode. When I'm dead, I want to be buried in a blanket and tossed in a hole. Let nature worry about me. Plastic bottles. Just buy a water filter and fill up those same bottles. And for people saying just drink tap water, I agree 100%. I'm just saying that there are a lot of people who only buy bottled water, drink it, throw it, and buy another one. Ridiculously unnecessary. Those plastics are so difficult to recycle, if at all. Most just ends up in a landfill anyway. Trying to convince them to buy a water filter is a good middle ground. My father-in-law boasts about how eco-conscious he is, but still does what I've just complained about. It drives me mental. People need to stop scalping GPUs. I mean, you could have stopped at scalping. Individual plastic coffee packets like Keurig cups. Lots of plastic waste. Clothes. I know I don't need any more. I have way too many as it is, and yet I keep buying them, and I kinda hate myself for it. New clothes make me feel so good though. Have you tried thrifting? Less waste and way cheaper, plus you can donate them back again after you're done. Also, finding a piece that fits you and is your style is much more satisfying than picking one off a rack of identical shirts. Smack. People should definitely stop buying smack. This response was brought to you by Crystal. Anything that an influencer gets paid to promote. Diamonds. Then how will my wife know that I love her? Products with palm oil in them. People need to stop buying anything they don't need. Most products create a want and then fill it, and the only purpose of the product is to take money from you and give it to the distributors. I go to estate sales all the time and I see tons of crap that people buy and then never use. You do not need the latest version of a Vegematic. You will never use a slap chopper. The set and forget rotisserie will be used to cook one chicken and then it will go in your basement to be set down and forgotten. That one chicken cost you a lot to cook. You do not need a snow globe from the gift shop to commemorate your trip to the world's biggest ball of twine. It's true that a lot of people make a living making, selling, and shipping this stuff, but they need to retool and just make useful things. Madden. Seriously, basically anything that comes from EA. They've just gotten a bit too greedy for my liking. Things that don't actually offer them joy. So many people just buy crap to feel a temporary high that quickly wears off. University books. Boycott them. Ridiculous price for individuals to pay for education. They should all be online publicly for free. Yeah, there's a fine line to walk between good reference materials that you can get a lot of use out of, and the stuff that's literally just a different edition of the same book every year with 1 or 2 sentences difference. Often you can just get these things in your uni library, if it's the latter. Reddit coins. Products from scalpers. Everyone who buys from them is a huge part of the problem. Plastic bags. My father's village is drowning in plastic bags. They're everywhere. Sometimes they melt in the sun, and I don't even want to know what the consequences are for the environment. Fantasy books that are first in a series of 13. Fantasy has become completely entrenched in this model where every story has to be a massive multi-volume epic. I can count on one hand the number of multi-volume series that actually needed to be 8 to 10 books long. Most of them could have been told in one trilogy, if not just one epic book. I 100% believe that writers are pressured to stretch out their 2-volume stories into 8 purely for the additional sales. Fruits and vegetables that are already cut and packaged in plastic. Mother Nature already produced the best natural packaging. Fast fashion, and I might be a hypocrite, because these big companies do not give a fork about workers. Second-hand stuff is the way to go if you want a mainstream brand. Ethical brands are another option, with second-hand ethical brands being the ideal choice. Single-use plastics. Crap toys that you buy at the dollar store. All they are is junk to fill up a landfill. It was nice during COVID when we were producing products that we needed and not all this junk crap that you can see everywhere. Generally speaking, wild-caught animals as pets. I had to go to the pet store today to buy some supplies and I was utterly horrified. Cages of wild-caught lizards, snakes, turtles, frogs and salamanders, many piled on top of each other and writhing around trying to escape. They all look sick and stressed and they're being sold at impulse buy prices. Unfortunately, none of the species I saw have a protected status in this state, and all are considered fair game. But that doesn't make it right. I can guarantee that 90% of the customers in that shop have no idea how to take care of these creatures, and the remaining 10% who do know better than to support their ongoing mass collection. Unless you work for a professional conservation facility or animal rehab center, please leave wild animals in the wild. Flushable wipes. They're actually not flushable and they're bad for your drain system. Giant SUVs and trucks that people don't need. It's one thing if you actually use the capacity regularly, but just to drive to groceries and to work, it's such a massive waste. Bottled water. Foie gras. It made me sick watching a video of a duck being force-fed. Those weird little disability or sickness awareness things like mugs, shirts, and so on. Speaking as a disabled person, not only is it insulting to have the very thing that's been plaguing us stamped on a cute little kid's cup, but it's also a needless waste of resources and money making those items that'll probably be used for a day at most. If people really care, just donate. It's better for the environment and it'll have more of an impact because less is used to make the items. Anything labeled homeopathic or naturopathic or anything like that. It's all pseudoscientific crap. If you are a normal, working-class person, you do not need to pay for tax services. Governments and financial institutions, like your bank, provide free software that you can use to file your taxes. Remember that it's a tax return that you're getting, not some bonus reward, so if you don't have to, it doesn't make sense to pay to get your own money back. Anything that is associated with the trash that is the Kardashian family. The latest phones and electronics. Electronic waste is an insanely big problem, especially in the countries that process, burn, the waste to get the precious metals from them. There is literally nothing wrong with your phone. You only got it less than a year ago. You don't need the latest model. Stop it. Live, love, laugh signs. Everyone in my family has one. This is not a happy house, Janet. All Nestle products. Their board are like real-life villains. Decimating the environment, child slavery, super violent, and their products suck anyway. Screw Nestle. Dryer sheets. Single use, they just contribute to your waste output and they make your towels less fluffy. Also, dryer sheets contain a potentially harmful chemical called quaternary ammonium compounds. According to Geller, at the very least it's been known to cause or worsen asthma and skin irritations. You can buy reusable wool dryer balls instead that naturally fluff up your clothes. Helium-filled balloons. Helium is a finite element and we're piddling it away in birthday balloons. Yep, it is absolutely wild that for a while the main visible use of this valuable element was just to hold up our brightly colored party baubles. Nuts. Glide floss. My oral hygienist pointed out that studies have linked the use of this floss with elevated levels of toxic chemicals in the body. Plus, this kind of floss can be too abrasive in the gums, leading to infection and gum recession. Thick, soft-threaded floss is the way to go. Helium balloons. There are so many medical and technical processes which require helium, and it can't be lab-created. It's mined, or extracted might be the right term, and it will eventually run out if things don't change. Single-use water bottles. I've got friends who buy 24 packs every fortnight and drink out of them. It's just literally so bad for the environment. I have a real issue with long-term storage units for most people. I understand that storage units have some value if you're in a situation where you're moving but have a gap without a permanent place to stay, or if you're going to be traveling for a few months or a year and get out of your current rental, as examples of good uses of these places, but I know tons of people who have a whole house or apartment and then rent a storage unit as well for years, and I find it completely baffling. Storage units aren't cheap, but most of what gets stored in them often is. It often works out in my mind that by the time you've paid to store it long enough to actually use it or move it to its final resting place, you could frequently have bought the contents of the storage units several times over. Amazon.com. F the way they treat people. I read an article where instead of buying air conditioning and paying for the extra electricity, Amazon hired EMTs at their warehouse because it was cheaper in extreme heat. Who the F thinks like that? Rags. People actually buy rags to clean with. That's what old clothes are for. That's why they're called rags. Kitchen unitaskers. If I can only use it for one ingredient and I can do that task better with anything else in my kitchen, then it's not worth your time. Thanks, Aunt Becky, but I don't need a watermelon slicer, rollie, or avocado knife. The main thing that comes to mind for me is batteries. I paid for some decent rechargeable batteries back at the start of 2015 as I was going through one AAA battery pack a week, and it honestly saved so much money and waste. I've literally just recycled 2 last month, the first 2 to die in 6 years. The other thing that stands out for me is Samsung products. I feel their quality control has declined over the last few years, and I've totally lost faith in their products. The S4, S5, Tab S2 have all had battery and software issues, and the A70 had a USB-C subboard module issue. I've had 3 repaired with the same issue. And the Tab E had a SIM card or microSD card slot issue. The only one I haven't had software issues with was the A70, but saying that, the repairs were naff. Anything from Wish. Dogs and cats. There are plenty in shelters that need adopting, and they're not inbred puppy mill dogs. Almonds. What an environmental disaster they are. So Chidi from The Good Place was right? What is the most blatant lie that a salesperson told when trying to make a sale? My grandma was told she should get a faster internet subscription because she lived on a hill and the electrons struggled to get up to her. I asked a hot dog vendor in New York City how to find the subway. Then I tried to purchase a Pepsi. Knowing that I was a tourist, he asked for $5. I said, "The sign says $2.50. And he says, "Oh, that's for the warm ones. This one's cold, so it's $5. At a market in Mexico, I asked, "Hey, what's this thing made out of? Wool?" Salesperson said, "Yes, of course." "Oh, I'm allergic to wool." "Oh, it's not wool." The similar thing happened to me in China. The salesperson said, "This is carved out of real elephant tusk. That's why it's so expensive." I said, "Oh, that's terrible. The poor elephant." Salesperson then switches tack. "Oh, just kidding. It's hard plastic. $10 and it's yours." "Oh, those are disposable flash drives for $4. They really only work a couple of times. What you really want is one of the competitor's drives for $15. Talking to a D-Link representative on the phone. They go, "Yeah, what you need to do is update the firmware on your router, but for us to install the update for you, we'll have to charge you for the service." I said, "Oh, okay, I just found the update on your website. I just have to download and install it, right? I can do that myself." No, if you do that without our help, you could destroy your router. With the file from your website, following the directions from your website. Yes. This random guy in a van outside my house trying to sell steaks. "Hey dude, you live here?" Yeah, what do you need?" "I have a bunch of leftover meat and I need to get rid of it. You can just have it for free." "Oh sure, come on in." He enters the house. "Okay, here's our prices." "I thought you said it was free." "Well, at these prices, it's practically free. Get out." You should really be careful about letting strangers into your home, no matter how tasty their meat is. Some of them just want to get a peek inside in case they want to break in later. The last commenter raises a valid point. We should be as careful in our choice of hookups as we are with shifty guys offering to give us free quality goods, no matter the size, juiciness, and girth of their meat. When convincing my grandmother to buy boots for a 2-year-old in advance, the saleswoman said that by next year, no store whatsoever is going to be selling baby shoes, and they'll be impossible to find. I should mention that I was in the store with her, which means this wasn't a matter of misinterpretation. She just blatantly told us that baby clothing stores were closing and shoes would not be sold anywhere. Also, my grandmother is not a native English speaker, which could be why the woman was trying to scam her. This car saleswoman tried to sell me on an option that, and I quote, "the Canadian Navy uses to prevent rust on their ships." I'm in the Canadian Navy, and no, we don't. The look on her face was almost worth paying more, though. "Another Canadian Navy guy here. I brought a new cell phone from Bell, and they threw in a screen protector that the salesman described as military grade. I laughed and joked to my wife that this meant it would be low quality and probably fall off within a week. Joke was on me. It fell off within a day. A kid I work with told a customer a certain bike was really strong because of its tectonic plates. I was having my laser eye surgery consultation, and the salesman told me that the surgeon who specializes in my type of eye was in town for the next week, so I had to be quick. The worst part is that I believed him at first. So yeah, I went elsewhere and got the surgery, not because he lied, just because it was cheaper elsewhere. But I found out something about the whole process that some probably don't know. There really is no fixed price for laser eye surgery. They charge you exactly what they think you can or will pay. One of the first things they ask at the consultation is how much you have to spend on it. Not exactly a lie, but a salesman once tried to sell a set of knives. His selling point was, they contain ions. His sales target was my chemistry teacher. Nobody buys laptops anymore, they're outdated, a Best Buy employee said, trying their hardest to sell me a tablet. I told a Toyota salesman that I'd narrowed my choices to either the Toyota Camry or Honda Accord. He started telling me about how smooth the Camry's ride was, and then proceeded to tell me with great concern for my personal well-being that the ride of the Honda Accord was so rough that it could lead to internal bleeding. "And the cheapest HDMI cable we have is $30, but you don't want that one. It won't get the signal to the TV. You need one of these $60 cables over here." Best Buy, one of the many, many reasons that I don't shop there anymore. I had Skyrim pre-ordered at EB Games Canada, and I went in to cancel it and get a refund so that I could buy it on Steam. And this girl tried to convince me that Steam was shutting down soon in order to get the game from them for like $18 more. When I was a kid in the 80s, I distinctly remember a Sears salesman's pitch about a microwave. This was the early 80s, and not a lot of people had them. He told my parents that you could put a piece of apple pie in the microwave with the ice cream on top, and it would heat up the pie without heating up the ice cream. Bull crap. This college salesman at Fry's Electronics, who looked only a year or two older than I, tried to sell me one of the lower-tier laptops of one of Lenovo's newest lineups. I was trying to buy the best one from last year's lineup, the price of which had dropped dramatically since the newer lineup was released. The one I was trying to buy had better specs all round and was cheaper. The employee tried to convince me that Blu-rays look better on the other 720p screen than on my model's 1080p. Customers who bought my model returned it and complained about its screen. Also that I shouldn't buy the model I wanted with the graphics card because it's not worth the electricity that it will drain up. Objective. That the newer model has a faster processor because how they arranged the circuits. Research I did before shopping showed that both processor models were the same, but in-store one chip was marked with an M. And after he knew he wouldn't change my mind, he said that the one that I wanted was out of stock. I called bullcrap and later asked another employee who said that they had two left. By the way, this was considered bait and switch, which is fraud. I told them that employee X had said it was out of stock, and they made him bring me what I wanted from the back. F employee X. Don't worry, this will last you a lifetime. You need to buy an Apple display for your MacBook Pro. They aren't compatible with all these myriad displays on the shelves right here, said a Best Buy employee. Around 2003 at Best Buy, my sister was about to buy a computer. The sales rep said that if she didn't buy and install Norton antivirus, about $80 at the time, that her computer would run 50% slower. I laughed and told him to his face that was bullcrap, and then we left. You know, guys, I'm beginning to get the vague idea that Best Buy may not in fact be the best place to buy. Granted, some of these stories are a little older, but I'm curious about whether their modern salesmen have the same reputation for blatantly lying the way some of the ones in our stories do. Any recent encounters you guys want to share in the comments? I had someone press my doorbell. I reminded them of the "No Canvassers" sign below my doorbell, to which she replied, "It's okay, I'm not here to sell you a painting." Here in the southern US, it's a "No Solicitors" sign with an additional handwritten sign that says, "That includes religion." I'm not hating on religion, but we get so many door-to-door people here, and I don't want to deal with them the same way I don't want to deal with someone trying to sell me a vacuum cleaner or a newspaper subscription. This wristband releases positive/negative ions to counter the negative/positive ions in your body and make you stronger. I was given both versions of the positive or negative by different people selling. Fake power balance wristbands. To clarify, the people that I found were not selling the bracelets branded as Power Balance, but another imitation of that. I even had a look on the Power Balance website and they mention about imitation Power Balance bracelets being sold. Scammers hating on scammers. This car is pulling to the left a little bit. Oh, that's in case you fall asleep at the wheel. The car will steer itself towards the median rather than off the side of the road. Oh good, I've always liked safety features designed to cause head-on collisions. Bro, these HDMI cables are a new release from Japan. They apparently transfer 100% of the image without losing any detail, meaning your DVDs will look like Blu-rays. I had the following exchange with the last car salesman that I dealt with. As you can see, it has nitrogen-filled tires. You know what that does, right? Not a whole hell of a lot in practice? Oh no, it does. You know how with an air-filled tire you can get a blowout? That's the oxygen inside actually exploding. With nitrogen, you don't have that problem. That's not even a little true. Oh, we don't have any of those. We have these things that are 10 times more expensive. Yes, we do, because I work in the warehouse for this company. I worked at a restaurant one time and my manager told all the service staff we were out of all the cheap wines in a ploy to get us to sell the more expensive stuff. It's entirely possible this store had an equally D-bag manager. You know what's not good for sales? Telling customers you're out of everything they try to order all night, thinking they'll buy something more expensive. Instead, everyone just skipped the wine and we lost out on what would have been sales. I watched a guy a few days ago try to sell a kid more drum heads than he needed. You know, you need to replace your bottom heads just as often as you replace the top heads, or you'll never be able to tune them. They might not tune to professional quality, but that doesn't mean you have to drop $80 every few weeks on them. And on a bit of a tangent, I hate when places advertise something for cheap to get you in the door, don't stock it, and then try to upsell you on a similar item. Yeah, we're out of that $250 laptop, but this $1,200 gaming laptop is just what your grandmother needs to surf the internet. It drives me up the wall. You get what you pay for. He was trying to sell me a $200 HDMI cable. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My recruiter told 17-year-old me that my unit would never get deployed. We did. I was here to say this exact same thing. First pep talk in boot camp was, "Your recruiter was a lying piece of crap. Welcome to the military." So true. While I was in basic, I heard a story about some guy being told by his recruiter that they don't shave heads anymore. At Best Buy. Of course this Nikon lens will go right with your Canon body, no problem. Most camera equipment is universal. I had to tell him, no, you're wrong. I bought a pretty expensive vacuum cleaner from a home goods store, and when I got it home and tried it out, it made this ear-piercing whistling noise. I brought it back to return it, and the salesman, trying to keep the sale, told me that all high-end vacuum cleaners made that sound. That's how you knew it was moving air at maximum power. I got my money back, he lost his commission, and I went elsewhere. After botching the install of a side mirror which caused the window to leak, the dealership told me that my car wasn't designed for high-pressure car washes. I told him that was bullcrap, but he kept calling me little lady, so I bolted. I had my dad call as a last resort, and lo and behold, they fixed the window seal properly. When I was buying a car, one salesman at a used car shop blatantly told me that I'm not allowed to test drive any cars before I buy them because it's against insurance laws. Right. They told me that they actually owned the furniture they were selling to me. I paid for furniture at a furniture store. I was promised it would be delivered from the warehouse in a week. The floor models were just the demo. I came to find out they were in the process of bankrupting when I made my purchase. All the employees knew this, but they wanted to get any commission on sales that they could. Another liquidation company already owned everything. To get our money back, we had to fight the charge with the credit card company. Ended up getting every cent back, luckily. I was at a crappy car dealership looking at an older Jeep Wrangler. It was a 4-cylinder, and I was looking for an inline 6. The sales guy told me he could sell me a conversion kit to add 2 cylinders to the engine. Now, I'm not trying to sell you anything, but you know, we were actually told to say this in the narrator's one door-to-door sales job, and even though on some level it was true because we were subscribing them to a service, I mean, it's still deceptive. We're taking away their money. I'm glad I sucked at that job. Oh, Windows 8 has no bugs because it's based on older versions, unlike the previous Windows operating systems, said the Best Buy employee managing the computer department. It's been proven to cure cancer, some lady trying to sell me some ointment. We integrate seamlessly with Outlook. I record all calls I make, and after we'd purchased said product and were trying to implement the Outlook integration, I called their support team only to find out that they in the future planned to make Outlook integration a thing. It was not something they offered now. So I got my panties in a bunch and I called the sales guy who claimed he never said that. Got a manager on the line who said he never would have said that. I must have misheard or misunderstood. I told them I'd recorded all the calls, with their permission, and I'd be reviewing my recordings to confirm if I'd misheard. And they were like, yeah, you do that. So I called them the next day and played them the recording of him explaining in detail just how great the Outlook integration currently was definitely available at the level of service we were paying for, and that if we had any issues, their support would love to help us out. So they were like, fine, sue us. So we did. It was excellent. They settled, so it didn't go to court or anything, but it was really satisfying. Also, don't mess with me when I say I record calls. I am not crapping you, and I will look that crap up. The woman who took her clothes off for money said, I really like you. You're different from the other guys that come in here. Plot twist, I'm that woman. At the vet's with my dog, his wife is trying to sell me this super expensive dog food. I'd already taken a sample home and fed some to my dog, but she didn't really like it, so I told her that. Her response was that, dogs have no taste buds. I just looked at her with a mix of surprise and disgust, and I walked out without a word. Oh, that's not a pyramid, that's a multi-level market. I was invited out to a job interview one time. The first part of it was an orientation in a rented warehouse district office, where they spent the first half an hour or more explaining with a slideshow how they weren't a pyramid scheme and what they were doing was totally legal. Yep, thanks, bye, don't call me again. If you get the gold-plated cables, they'll protect your TV from getting viruses. I work for a satellite TV company and I get free service. So I said to a Comcast caller, "I get my TV service for free. Only way I'd switch is if you paid me to use your service. Can you do that?" The agent said, "Yes, we can." "Alright, have a good day. Bye." That Norton Antivirus is an excellent program, when in reality it's a goddamn virus itself. In Best Buy, they told me that if I didn't get the additional $30 charger for my iPod, the included USB charger would shorten my iPod's battery life with each use. Lies! She didn't really lie, but did a bad job of selling me something. I was going into a store looking for some boots, and I asked her for them in a size 9, and she straight up tells me, "Oh, so you can try them here and buy them online?" I was like, no, I might want to buy them here. Then when I do try the boots on, she starts telling me the shoes I came in with were complete crap and low quality. At this point, I'm like, what the frick? "You unappreciative idiot. Tell me where on the internet you can go and have people crap on you for what you're wearing while you're just trying to buy something nice for yourself. Can you get this experience anywhere else, huh?" Real estate agent tried to tell me that the house I was looking at wasn't on a slab. I was like, okay, show me the basement. Fricking idiot. I was at Best Buy with my grandmother helping her purchase a laptop. The person who was following us around, trying to sell us on computers and software, had something to say about everything I suggested to my grandma. I'm not incredibly educated with laptops, but I know that my grandma wanted a basic computer for internet, email and stuff, so I found a Toshiba for around $350 that was perfect for her. And he said, "Toshibas are known for getting viruses and freezing up. I suggest this $600 HP. I said, "No, my grandma isn't paying $600 for a laptop she doesn't need. She wants basic. This is basic. She doesn't want a bunch of added crap." She sided with me and got the Toshiba. Then he tried selling her an antivirus. "Norton is the best and most reliable when it comes to protecting your computer. And at $80 a year, you're getting such a deal." Screw that. I told my grandma I'll get her an antivirus at the low cost of her famous homemade chili. 1.5 years with that Toshiba and Microsoft Security Essentials, and she's had no problems. In short, screw the rude employees at Best Buy. Enlarge your member in just 3 weeks. It took 6 weeks, the liars. Some portly gentleman once sold me a chocolate bar and told me it would keep my face from getting any uglier. In retrospect, I think he was lying. Sadly, it took the narrator several days after he found the answers for this script to determine that this was in fact a SpongeBob reference and not a real-life story. I've been down a deep YouTube rabbit hole trying to work out the context after people replied to this initial comment with a whole bunch of obscure remarks about the chocolate also bringing world peace or rubbing it on their face to make them live forever. Oh, internet. "Oh, these bright blue pants look really good on you. I'm a straight male and she was lying. They look fabulous on me." My refrigerator died, so I went to Lowe's looking for a new one. My wife and I found a model we liked and started talking to the floor rep about it. We ended up buying it and he started trying the typical upsell for the warranty. One of the features of the warranty was that if the fridge died, Lowe's would compensate you for up to $200 worth of food. That sounded like a pretty good deal, since my daughter has food allergies and we have to shop at Whole Foods a lot, so it gets expensive. I started focusing on that and asked what would happen if the entire neighborhood lost power for a few days. "Oh, I mean Lowe's will still compensate you. So you're telling me that if the fridge still works fine but the power lines are down or something, that Lowe's will still compensate me for up to $200? Yep. Even though the fridge itself didn't break but it was the fault of the power company? Yep. It's a good deal, right? That is a good deal. I'll take the warranty." A year later we had a snowstorm and the power was out for 3 days. Lowe's refused to compensate us. My wife and I spent several hours on the phone with the service reps, and they said that's not part of the warranty and that the sales reps know better than to say something like that. We called the original store and we were told the exact same thing. In short, a Lowe's sales rep lied to my wife and I to get us to buy a warranty for a refrigerator. I refuse to shop at Lowe's anymore because of that. Anyone from Lowe's, if you're reading this, we're about to buy a new oven, microwave, and dishwasher. I just got done remodeling my kitchen and bought everything from Home Depot. And to all the people telling me I'm an idiot, I already know that. I was out of food money and several hours of my day. If you're not going to contribute something worthwhile, please just save your breath. Today I learned that all Best Buy employees are blatant liars. At guitar centers, some of the teenage drummers try to bullcrap me, thinking I'm just another starting drummer who doesn't know a flam from a floor tom. I know my crap when it comes to drums. I was in looking for a new drum set, seeing as I was upgrading from my starter set and I wanted a quality one. While I was looking around, one of the drum salesmen asked if he could help me, to which I replied no. He left me alone for a good 10 minutes until he came up again and started looking over my shoulder to see what I was looking at. It was a Gretsch Renown set that had maple wood. After a second, he says, "Yeah, maple is good wood, but honestly, the wood doesn't matter. I like birch because it doesn't warp as bad when you spill water on it, and it's a much more rich, natural sound." I literally walked out after hearing that, and I've never been back. There are so many things wrong with that statement that I can't support a place that hired people to spew garbage like that kid was. What made adoptive parents return their new child? I had a neighbor named Melissa. She was about my age, like 8, and her brother was slightly older, Giovanni. I remember when they moved in because her baby brother was named Kermit, and I thought that was extremely bizarre. She was eccentric, to say the least. My mum let her come over pretty much whenever she wanted during the summer because she always seemed to be ignored by her parents. Giovanni used to come over too, but I remember he'd leave a lot to go run errands with his parents or for dinner. Whenever I asked her if she had to go, she said she couldn't eat what they could or go with them anywhere. They basically shushed her out of the house. It was concerning, so I told my parents. My mum tried making friends with her mum several times, but the woman was just cold. Anyway, turns out Melissa was adopted. I'm not sure how my mum found out, but I remember coming home from school one day and Melissa just wasn't there. She normally waited outside of my house. A week or more went by, still didn't come over. Our neighborhood was very gossipy, but someone found out they gave her back because she was chatty and they originally just wanted all boys. Her family moved out shortly after this. I have an ex-girlfriend, let's call her Rosie. Around 2008, when we were both 14, both her and her infant sister were in foster care. Shortly into our relationship, a couple with a 6-year-old boy decided they wanted another child, but didn't want to undergo childbirth again. So what they did was adopt her sister and give Rosie a short time to live with them as a foster child to see if she'd fit into the family. Understandable. They kept her for around 2 weeks and then said no because their biological son wanted to be the oldest. Now she hasn't got to see her sister in 2 years. I hate that family. She only had to be there for 4 years, if that, and to let a 6-year-old's reasoning keep you from keeping 2 sisters together and then not letting one see the other is just sick. My cousin was adopted twice. Her first adoptive family decided that they just didn't want to be parents anymore after having her for 3 years. She was friends with my cousin, so my aunt took her in and adopted her. She's all grown up now and a beautiful, happy woman. My parents joke all the time that they're going to return me. Joke's on them, I'm 30 now, but really my parents love me, and I've never ever seen them as anything but my mum and dad. Though my dad said the other day that if I get a DNA test and I'm not 100% Korean, he wants his money back. He paid for a Korean and he wants a Korean, not a hybrid. From what I've read, this happens more commonly with children adopted from Russia. People want white kids. They get white kids with fetal alcohol syndrome, profound socialization problems, and disabilities. They're kids who require a tremendous amount of therapy, patience, time, and money. I don't know if it's still an issue, but in the 80s and 90s it was in the news. People would put toddlers alone on flights back to Russia. Jesus Christ, I don't know what annoys me more. People being picky about the ethnicity of their adopted children, or the fact that they don't do their research and just dump them if they aren't easy to raise. I guess adoptive parents can be just as crappy as regular ones. Trigger warnings on some pretty sad subject matter and mental illness going forward. Yep, my aunt and uncle went to Russia to adopt a 3-year-old boy. They ended up also bringing home an infant girl. After a few weeks with the kids at home, they were starting to tell the family they were going to return the little boy because he was too much work for them. Cue the family backlash and everyone stepping up to take the boy instead of him going back to Russia. And I think they felt pressured to keep him, which they did. It's very clear that my aunt still resents the heck out of him, though. She does not like him at all. I used to work in children's services and knew a few kids who were returned. I actually agreed with the parents in some of those cases. In a couple of cases, the parents really shouldn't have adopted a kid that was known to be troubled. One boy's family decided to return him to the care of the state when one day they came home to find he'd shattered the toilet with a hammer and was caught mistreating the family dog. He also creeped out the couple's teenage daughter to the point where she was threatening to run away to get away from him. To our knowledge, he never managed to actually do anything to her. I knew of a few others, but that one stood out the most. Bear in mind that I also worked with very disturbed boys, so I didn't meet the kids that were returned because the parents were bad. One of the sadder ones to me was a kid who'd been raised wrong in every way possible, and a kind but very naive couple who adopted him. They didn't listen to any advice we tried to give them because they knew that love conquers all, and they figured that if they were just nice enough, he'd be all better in a few months or maybe 1 year. They thought that at the end, after 2 years, he'd be a normal kid. They weren't prepared for his baggage at all. My understanding was that he did get a little better after some years with them, but after a while they just gave up and gave him back. It destroyed him, and any progress he'd made vanished. I have a friend who was adopted from Russia, and aside from being a little behind in school, he was a normal kid. His parents couldn't have children, so they flew to Russia to adopt a 4-year-old girl, him, 2 years old, and his biological sister, 3 years old. Well, when they got to the care facility, they got to pick up all the kids, who were all in separate rooms. They get my friend and his non-biological sister, but for some reason they won't let him see the biological sister. The parents spend the night there, expecting that the next morning they'll get to see their daughter. Finally, the caretakers bring them to the little girl. When the girl saw them, she started throwing her toys, punching people, screaming, pulling her hair out, and just going crazy. So they decided not to adopt her. The mother told me she now regrets it. She believes the orphanage told the girl to act that way because another family might have offered more money. The whole trip was just suspicious, she told me, and that if she had a choice, she would have demanded to adopt her anyways. Oh my god, and I just remembered another family who gave up their daughter. I went to elementary school with this quiet kid named Daniel. He had really bad speech problems, but the only thing I ever heard him say clearly was how excited he was about his new adopted sister. Now honestly, I didn't like Daniel, he was annoying and he smelled bad, but my friend, let's call her Kathy, was his best friend. They spent all their time together and she regularly visited the house. In the beginnings of the 4th grade, Daniel's family adopted this adorable little girl. She was really shy and couldn't speak English. Halfway through our 4th grade year though, Daniel just stops coming to school. I talked to Kathy and she told me that his family wouldn't answer the phone. Kathy and her mother eventually go to Daniel's house to see what's up. His mom tells them they returned their daughter because she was trouble and too immature. Daniel and his family moved away after that. I have no idea why they would have given up their 4-year-old daughter. I know adoptive children have a tendency to have issues, but giving up a tiny child who needs your help just sounds so selfish. I was adopted when I was 10. I wasn't given back, but it was almost hell. I just came to say that you need to be a really caring person if you're going to adopt any kid older than a baby. I was ripped from my family and thrown in with a woman who thought to completely change me instead of accepting me for who I was. I got PTSD from the day I was given to my adoptive family, severe self-hatred because I've never lived up to the standards set by my adoptive mother, and crazy attachment issues. If I just had someone adopt me who could have just said, hey, that stuff was messed up, so we know you're going to need a lot of time to adjust, and that's cool, we're here for you. At 10 years old, you're already getting a sense of who you are, so we can't really change that. We can only guide you out of trouble the best we can. You don't have to call us mum or dad, you already have those. We're not here to replace them. We're here to give you the stability that they couldn't. But the damage is done. I'm 27, I've got almost 2 decades of pent-up crap I now have to get rid of. So, if you're going to adopt an older kid, don't expect them to be grateful. Don't expect them to love you right away. Don't expect them to be perfect. They'll argue. They'll get in trouble. They'll scream at you that you're not their real parents. Take it all in your stride and don't overreact. This is their process for adjusting. This is what you signed up for. My adoptive mother, when we'd get into arguments, would yell at me. Fine, do you want to go back and live with your father? And that cut like a knife. This was the first home I'd ever been in for longer than 2 years since I was born. She threatened to take away the only place I'd ever had any stability. Don't ever do that to a kid. You have no idea the kind of damage you can inflict on a child doing that. My roommate in college was born in South America, Venezuela, I believe. There was an incident shortly after birth that left her blind. She was put up for adoption, I don't know if that had anything to do with her being blind, and was later adopted by an American family. The family put her through surgery to correct her vision problem. When the doctors told them that they were unable to fix her problem and it likely couldn't be fixed, they put her up for adoption again. She was later adopted by a woman who herself was blind, so I guess things kinda worked out. The lady that moved into my family's old home had adopted a child that was deaf. She was told that the baby was totally healthy and had passed all the tests. She kept the baby, but sued the adoption agency. When I last saw the kid, he was 5 and he seemed pretty happy. I mean, I'm glad at least that the latter of this pair kept the kid and took steps to ensure that the agency would disclose things better in the future. But on the other hand, would she have adopted if she'd known this in the first place? I mean, I hope so. This is going to be one of those sad videos, folks, if you hadn't worked that out already. My chemistry teacher in high school did this. She was unable to bear children for whatever reason, so she looked into adoption. She was obviously very excited and shared the news with her students. There was a very young mother, like a pregnant teenager, who was looking to give her child to her. After she was born, she brought in pictures of her new daughter to class, and we spent the first couple of minutes sharing that moment before we returned to balancing equations and other chemistry stuff. Well, it turns out that in the adoption process, the birth mother has something like 60 days to change her mind and null the contract and ask for her child back, something which both parties sign off on. On day 59, the birth mother changes her mind, insists that she wants her kid now, so my teacher had to return her daughter. The next day, she came to school as composed as one can be after such a traumatic event, but we could all tell she had obviously been crying before she started her lecture, and barely made it through the period without breaking down and running away in class. I don't want to vilify the birth mother too much, but she really did wait until almost the last minute to change her mind, and my teacher surely thought this was all but a done deal. I can't imagine the heartbreak at returning home to an empty crib. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. This happened to a girl I knew. She was born, left up for adoption, adopted for a year, returned, and adopted again. When her second adopted parents told the story 20 years later, she decided that she didn't want to be alive anymore. Pretty bloody sad. As an adopted child, I believe that most parents who adopt have zero desire to return their child, as you put it. My mother was told by several doctors that as a result of childhood polio, she'd be unable to have children. 3 years after they adopted me, they had my brother. Still no refunds. When I was in middle school, some family friends adopted a boy a year or so younger than me. They already had 3 biological kids of their own, one of which was a girl a little older than me. They ended up quietly returning him after caring for him for about 8 months. He was in therapy but often threatened to burn the house down, to do terrible things to his siblings, and frequently stole and hurt the family pets. Some days he had days when he'd be completely kind and caring, and others when he tried to kill the cat. I guess they were put in a position of putting their other kids at risk by keeping him. I know the mum still wonders if they could have done things differently. A cousin of mine and his wife adopted a baby when I was about 4. The agency they went through told them he was a perfectly healthy, normal baby. When they got him home, he screamed constantly. Not just cried, he screamed. That's the only thing I remember about him. Turns out the baby was born without a brain. He had only a brain stem. The agency knew this all along and admitted it when they were confronted about charging them an arm and a leg and not disclosing the proper information. So the agency said, "Fine, give him back and we'll give you a different one." After a lot of thought, they decided that that was the best option for them, since the child they were originally given really would never develop to have any kind of normal life. To this day, certain relatives think that giving the original baby back was wrong, but I think they might have made the right choice. Wow, can people really do all this stuff? I thought if you adopted a child, it was yours. Not like a t-shirt that doesn't fit right, so you take it back for a refund or exchange. Isn't there some kind of matching process for people who are adopting kids? My aunt and uncle adopted 3 girls from China. The 2 younger ones were adopted as infants, and since they were raised in a good home, they have no issues whatsoever, aside that we still don't know their correct ages. They're supposedly 10 and 14, but they look and behave much younger. However, the 3rd girl they adopted, at 13, she was in and out of several different homes. She has a disorder where she frequently takes things from people to try to hold on to them. After many attempts at therapy and rehabilitation, she was sent away to a school in Florida, which they're paying out of the wazoo for. It's specifically for girls with attachment disorder. It's very sad because they weren't allowed to see her as part of the therapy, and she's been in the school for about 2 years now. When I was little, my parents used to go to temple. There was a couple who adopted a 3-year-old boy, which is pretty old for adopting. He too was adopted from Russia. I grew up with that kid who always used to hang out with the older women, gossip with them, and was basically one of the ladies. When he was about 14, they just gave him back. No one ever knew why, but in my family we think that he came out of the closet and they just sent him away. That's awful, and I still think of him from time to time, imagining what his life might look like. I miss you, buddy. Jesus Christ. He was the kid you raised by the time he was 14. This is absolutely reprehensible on the part of these people, and they've probably caused greater hurt and trauma in him than if they'd never adopted him in the first place. I hope he got understanding fosters who at least let him be who he was and gave him a safe space, because I think he'd understandably have massive trust issues after that. My parents adopted twice in the early 80s. Back then, you didn't know anything about the background of the child, nor was there any training for the adoptive family or any support services following the adoption. We adopted a 4-year-old boy, and all was good for a few months. Then his real colors started to show. He was violent and combative to the points of physically attacking my mother. Now we know he had something like combative detachment disorder. After 4 years of tears, prayers, and effort, his birth grandparents re-adopted him. During the same time, we adopted a 9-month-old girl who we now know was a smack baby. She has a list of 3- and 4-letter problems that would fill a sheet of paper. Physical problems, mental issues, and lots of emotional problems. Most notably, RAD, or reactive attachment disorder, which means she's incapable of accepting and returning affection. By the time she was in middle school, I, her older brother, was having to physically restrain her from attacking my mum. We all locked our doors in our sleep due to nightly death threats, and anything that could be used as a weapon had to be locked up. Once she got large enough, my mum had to call the police several times to get her to calm down, and eventually my parents put her in a private girls' home. The money to pay for my college went to pay for her care, and when she turned 18, she signed herself out and isn't doing well whenever we try to get in touch. I'm incredibly bitter at the system that didn't prepare my family for what we were getting into, or at least provide help after the fact. I've had years of therapy to deal with my emotional damage, and I still regularly have nightmares of either of those kids murdering my parents. Sadder, though, is what it did to my parents. They're still heartbroken and think that they somehow failed these kids. Sadder still, these kids could have had a much better chance if the adoptive services would have been more thorough. In short, my family adopted 2 messed up kids and didn't know they were messed up. One was re-adopted by his grandparents, and the other is an addict working girl now that she's grown up. I'll tell the story on behalf of my mum. She adopted the 2 children of a childhood friend. I was a toddler and she was pregnant with my birth sister, but she adopted a 6-year-old boy and infant girl. My mum had lived in foster care and wanted to help these kids avoid it. Both of them were diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, or the Russian orphan disorder, probably because their mothers had a severe substance problem. The mother would leave my brother sleeping in the car while she took off her clothes for money. My sister exhibited withdrawal symptoms until she was 6 months old. Stuff like that. My mum kept my brother for a year and my sister for 7 years before putting them up for re-adoption through a private agency. My brother dislocated a younger kid's arm, and my sister was expelled from kindergarten and had a fascination with her own poop, and they both experimented with fire. Lots of inpatient and outpatient therapy just didn't seem to help. My dad moved out. My mum was a single parent with 2 other small children. She gave my adopted siblings up. It took me years to forgive my mum. I know she did what she thought was best, and she really tried. My brother was adopted by a cool couple that did him a lot of good. My sister was adopted by hardcore Christians who cut off contact with us. Honestly, I found her on MySpace a few years ago, and she's still kind of a mess. She gave her own kid up for adoption and quickly got pregnant again. I think in a situation like that, nobody gets to be the good guy. When I was a little kid, I went to daycare with my siblings to a woman's house whose neighbors had adopted. The neighbors really wanted this one little girl, but had to take her older sister and younger brother as a group in order to get the child, which is messed up already that they wanted to break the children apart. Well, they neglected the 2 they didn't want a whole bunch. They only brought the one girl a bike, and when somebody gave the other 2 free bikes, they threw them out. My babysitter would let the 2 come over when the parents were taking their favorite one out. I shared my candy with them. I stopped going to that woman for babysitting, and I never found out what happened to them. While it wasn't adoption, a year ago I took in a 17-year-old high school senior who really didn't have any other options. After the first month, things had finally settled down, and I was starting to feel like he was turning some things in his life around. At this point, Mum re-enters the picture, but he really didn't want anything to do with her anymore. I found out later she won him over by promising not to make him follow any rules when he was at her house. I was naive enough to think him spending time with his mum was going to be a good thing, and since he was 18 by this point, and I'd never actually adopted him, I really didn't have too much of an option. He started staying at his mum's again 1 night a week. She'd buy him beer and turn a blind eye towards his use of pain meds, and she got to feel like a good mother again because she was seeing her son again. His grades started to slip, he started disrespecting his teachers and me, money started disappearing from my wallet, but he refused to acknowledge that anything was going on. It was around this time that I learned he was not only using, but also selling anything he could get his hands on. We're talking green herb, pain meds, Adderall, spice, and I finally issued an ultimatum. I told him I was willing to be patient and help him work through everything else, but if he wanted to continue to live in my house, he needed to stop dealing. He packed his stuff that night and left. I continued to meet with him and tutor him and thought all things considered, we still had a pretty good relationship despite me having to ask him to leave. I later learned he didn't feel the same way. He started targeting other students I was working with, and soon several of them were using substances provided by him. It was brilliant on his part. He really knew how to hurt me. I've spent the last year trying to pick up broken pieces he's left behind and feeling responsible for some other students that have been or currently are struggling with a variety of things because of him. I was adopted at 2 months of age, and they never hid it from me, so there was no family insertion drama. I'm now a 53-year-old man. When I was a child, remember, adopted, my parents would threaten to take me back to where they got me whenever I brought home a B on my report card or didn't pack up my room or didn't work hard enough helping in the yard. No other mistreatment and no slave driving, but damn, I'm still kind of messed up from those threats. Seriously, this isn't a joke. I'm sitting here sweating just reading these comments. My ex-wife used to say, "It's a wonder you're as close to normal as you are," after visits with my parents, and she wasn't completely joking. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.